The tale of reincarnation into another world is a familiar one. A hero is granted the strongest skills and becomes a great champion. Yet, for the young boy Cain, his own power manifests in a much simpler, more fundamental way as he casts a spell, crying out for stone. The spell concludes, leaving a newly formed stone tile on the ground. Wiping sweat from his brow, Cain breathes a sigh of relief, glad that his work is complete. His efforts are met with gratitude. A nearby peddler claps his hands, thanking the boy for making the road easier to travel. Cain, sitting on the ground, beams with pride as the small crowd around him shows their appreciation. He looks up at the smiling faces, reflecting on his role. He knows he is not some chosen hero destined to fell mighty foes with a single blow. He realizes, however, that if his actions can bring happiness to others, then that is more than enough. This is the story of such a kind-hearted protagonist. His father, Luke, watches with a weary but proud expression, remarking on the fact that a 6-year-old is the one maintaining the road. His sister, Alice, gently reminds them that it's time to head back. As he walks through the town, the fruits of his labor all around him, it becomes clear. This is the story of one who uses the memories of a past life, not for glory, but to achieve great things for the people of his new world. Meanwhile, in another world entirely, a 35-year-old man named Michio Tsuchida was on his way home after working on his day off. As he walked, a scene of terror unfolded nearby. A woman screamed for a man to release a little girl named Ai-chan, whom he held captive. The captor, his eyes wild, announced his intent to travel to another world in 2 minutes, planning to offer the child to a being called Marigus-sama and pleading to be transferred. Michio's attention snaps to the disturbance. He stares in disbelief, realizing the gravity of the situation. A woman beside him is already on the phone with the police as a chilling premonition washes over him. He knows this feeling all too well. It has always preceded disaster. His eyes dart between the desperate captor, the terrified child, and a nearby truck, its back open. As the captor screams that only 1 minute remains, Michio's expression hardens. This is serious. He realizes the situation is dire. As the attacker declares it is time, Michio Tsuchida lunges forward, shouting for him to stop. But his intervention is met with a swift, brutal response. A blade sinks into his side, and he collapses to the ground in agony. As he lies bleeding, the attacker is restrained by an unseen party. The crazed man struggles, screaming to be let go to Marigus-sama, and bellows at the fallen Michio not to get in his way. With the danger past, the rescued mother pulls her daughter, Ai-chan, into a tight embrace. Tears of relief stream down her face as she sobs her gratitude, thanking the one who saved them, though she does not know who it is. Her voice, repeating, "Thank you," echoes in the darkness of his fading consciousness. It is soon joined by other, unfamiliar voices, all calling out a single name, Cain. They plead for him to wake up, to pull himself together and stay focused. His eyes flutter open. A young boy with light hair lies in a soft bed, blinking slowly as he takes in the unfamiliar surroundings. He is immediately met by the tearful, relieved face of a beautiful woman, who exclaims that Lord Cain has awakened. The boy, confused, wonders where he is and who she is, noting the unfamiliar clothing and furniture around him. Beside the woman, a young girl with twin tails looks on as a maid is told to notify the master of the house. A terrible headache strikes him, and with it a massive amount of information floods his mind. He sees images of a family, the woman, the girl, and a stern-faced man. The truth crystallizes in his thoughts. He is Cain Sanrose, the 4th son of Viscount Sanrose. He now remembers. 2 weeks have passed since that moment. Sitting up in bed, Cain fully grasps his new reality. He has been reincarnated into a different world. His new mother, Lydia Sanrose, the first lady of the family, approaches his bedside with a worried expression, asking if he is okay. He recalls that the boy Cain was 5 years old when he had his accident, and he now possesses those memories. She leans in very close to check on him, remarking that his complexion doesn't look bad. She then reveals the cause of his condition. He fell down the stairs and almost died. Overwhelmed by her proximity, Cain stammers as his 2 sisters watch from nearby. He eagerly declares his hunger, just as his mother, Lydia, arrives with a tray of food. She has brought rice porridge and bread, which he notes looks delicious. Lydia smiles warmly at his enthusiasm. He then asserts that he can eat by himself, a wave of embarrassment washing over him. His mother, however, pays his protest no mind, cheerfully instructing him to open his mouth. Despite his protests, she brings a spoonful of porridge to his lips. Cain shuts his eyes tightly as his mother coos, feeding him like a small child. After he is finished, Lydia happily remarks on how much he ate, while Cain remains visibly flustered by the attention. She then reflects on his recent change in behavior, noting that he used to be a much more clingy child. Since waking up from his accident, however, he seems to have become more gentle. Hearing this, Cain is startled. He realizes his more mature demeanor is being noticed and that he must act more childish to fit in, worrying that his distant behavior stems from retaining his past life's memories. Just as he has this thought, his mother playfully pulls him into a hug, calling him a clingy child. Their moment is interrupted by a soft voice from the doorway. It is Alice Sanrose, the eldest daughter of the family, politely asking permission to enter. Lydia grants her permission, noting that her visit is unavoidable today. Alice explains her polite habit of always knocking and waiting for a response before entering a room. Alice rushes to her brother's side, her face etched with concern. She asks if he is all right and urges him to rest well. Lydia reveals that Alice has been worried about Cain this entire time, and their father, Luke, appears to playfully chide Alice for her bluntness, causing her to blush. Ignoring her father's teasing, she leans close to Cain's face, declaring that as his big sister, she will check if he has a fever to confirm he has truly recovered. She presses her forehead against Cain's, checking his temperature. Finding no fever, she pulls back as Cain lets out a surprise sound, his mother Lydia looking on from the side. As she places her hand on his forehead instead, Cain closes his eyes, a small smile on his face. He internally notes how nice and cool his big sister Alice's hands feel. He reflects on how, unlike his own unremarkable past self, his new family is stunningly beautiful. The thought brings to mind his 3 older brothers and his doting older sister, Alice. A deep voice cuts through the moment. His father, Luke Sanrose, Lord of the Domain, tells Alice that if she keeps this up, Cain won't be able to get any rest. Heeding her father's words, Alice sits beside her brother. She looks at him closely and remarks that his complexion has improved a great deal. His father agrees, noting that with Cain's health restored, he should be fine for the baptism ceremony scheduled for the following week. The news catches Cain completely by surprise. The narrative shifts to explain the setting. The capital where Cain lives is a walled town with about 5,000 people, considered small for a viscounty, which typically governs territories with populations over 10,000. A fundamental rule of this world is then revealed. Upon turning 5, every child undergoes a baptism ceremony, where they are granted at least one skill by the gods. The official explanation for this rite is that it serves to check an individual's aptitudes, which are made manifest through the specific magic skill they receive. Cain is shaken. He realizes the skill he receives will determine his entire future, a nerve-wracking prospect. He contrasts this high-stakes reality with his unremarkable past life, feeling the immense difference as he gazes out at his new home. He acknowledges his worries about the future, but his excitement quickly takes over. Having been given a second chance in a different world, he resolves not to waste it and to have fun. His mind fills with fantasies of common reincarnation tropes, an infinite item box, mastery over all magical elements, and alchemy. Gazing at the church spire, he eagerly wonders what kind of skill he will receive. On the day of the ceremony, Cain walks alongside his family through the grand, vaulted halls of the church. As they proceed, a church attendant steps forward, politely asking his mother, Lydia, and his sister, Alice, to wait in the main hall. Before he is led away, his family offers their support. Alice wishes him good luck with a cheerful smile, while Lydia, her expression a mixture of hope and concern, tells him she hopes he receives a good skill. He and his father are then brought before an elderly man in ornate vestments. The man introduces himself as Sistina, the bishop, and thanks Cain for coming. Without delay, he announces the start of the baptismal ceremony, instructing Cain to hold his hand, close his eyes, and he will offer a prayer. As the bishop's hand gently takes his, a faint glow of runes emanates from their touch. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoes directly in Cain's mind. Welcome. He realizes with a jolt that it is the very same voice he heard at the moment of his reincarnation. In a realm of sparkling light, Cain finds himself standing before a radiant, winged woman of divine stature. She introduces herself as Goddess Guardia, explaining that this is the divine realm and that she called him here specifically to thank him. A bewildered Cain can only ask where he is. He is stunned, realizing she is one of the gods of this world who also governs the earth. His heart pounds as he understands she is reading his mind. Guardia then asks if he remembers his final moments, and the memory floods back. He died protecting a young girl. The goddess takes his hands in hers, thanking him profusely. She then reveals a startling truth. The child he saved was the vessel for a grandchild. As her soft hand gently touches his cheek, Cain is flustered by the sensation. Guardia smiles warmly, thanking him by name and affirming that if he hadn't protected the girl, the outcome would have been terrible. He stammers, trying to deny the praise, still processing the fact that the girl was the goddess's grandchild. Guardia simply expresses her relief that he is safe. In response to his unspoken question, she explains with a serene smile that it was all made possible through her divine power. Guardia elaborates, showing him an image of the earth. She clarifies that while direct intervention was possible, it would have caused a distortion that would ripple from Earth into this new world. For this reason, she is deeply grateful that he protected both her grandchild's life and the world itself. Hearing this, Cain beams with pure joy. He feels that his life finally had meaning and has nothing more to say. With that settled, Guardia announces it is time for the next task. A translucent screen materializes, displaying status, Cain Sanrose. Cain stares in awe, recognizing the status screen he's always longed for. Guardia, however, looks on with curiosity, remarking that he already possesses a skill. He listens as the goddess, Guardia, confirms that he has indeed inherited a recovery magic skill from his mother, Lionel. She also notes that she remembers his hand glowing just before he passed away. As he processes this, Garya explains that as a token of their gratitude, they would like to grant him 3 skills. Cain looks up at her, realization dawning on him that she's like his real mother. In response to her offer, a large machine resembling a slot machine materializes before them, its screen flashing with the words "Skill Start." Garya cheerfully instructs him to press the roulette button. His eyes widen in shock. He realizes with horror that they can't simply choose his skills. It's a gamble. As this thought crosses his mind, the machine begins to whir loudly. Garya chuckles, explaining that because some reincarnated individuals chose skills that could disrupt the world's balance, they had to make the process random. She offers him 3 skills as a consolation, but Cain is already celebrating, overjoyed at the prospect of receiving powerful cheat skills. He reaches out a determined hand towards the large start button, hoping for some cool abilities and musing that even a goddess has it tough. With a press of his finger, the reels spin rapidly before locking into place one by one. The results are revealed: Earth Magic, Unlimited Magic Power, and Magical Array Magic. Both he and Garya watch intently. He stares at the results, thinking they seem rather plain. He wonders if Earth Magic is even strong, but then reasons that with unlimited magic power, he should be able to come up with something to make it work. His internal debate is met by Garya's sheepish expression. She averts her gaze, admitting that it seems his luck stat wasn't very high. She then quickly brightens, explaining that his result isn't a dud. As the Earth Goddess herself, she can grant him her divine blessing, which will provide a bonus to his Earth Magic. Cain looks on, stunned by this revelation. He feels a warm, divine energy flow into him as the Earth Goddess, Garya, places her hand upon his head, bestowing her blessing. With the blessing complete, she explains that this should be sufficient. Though she cannot grant it frequently, she assures him that now, if he prays at a church, the gods will be able to find him. His consciousness returns to the church, where Bishop Sistina cries out in astonishment that Cain received 3 skills. As Garya's form fades, she wishes him a future filled with happiness and asks that he occasionally report on his well-being. Back in the physical world, his father remarks that while the skills seemed a bit weak, Cain has also received the blessing of Goddess Garya. The bishop agrees, adding that this blessing could mean his stats are completely off the charts. Intrigued, Cain immediately decides to check his status. He summons his status plate, his eyes widening at the display. It confirms his name, age, and the blessing of Goddess Garya, but his mana is listed as 1800 with an infinity symbol, while his other physical stats are all in the single digits. His gaze fixes on the shockingly low numbers. He panics internally, realizing his vitality is only 5. He fears he could die from the slightest exertion. He clutches his head in despair, his dream of a powerful and easy life in this new world seemingly shattered by his abysmal physical attributes. But then a thought strikes him. He realizes that his Earth Magic skill might be a perfect match for his current situation. With newfound determination, he extends his hand and chants an incantation, commanding clay to be created and to follow his will. His spell materializes a perfect clay abacus. His father looks on in amazement, remarking that he has never seen anything like it and asking if this is a tool for arithmetic. Cain, meanwhile, internally admires his well-made creation. He explained that his Earth Magic could be used for creating things or for agriculture. From off-panel, a voice praised him, exclaiming, "You're amazing, Cain." His father's amazement only grew. Holding a bounty of oversized vegetables, Luke listened as a farmhand reported that the field Cain had created with his magic was yielding an incredible harvest. "This is amazing, Danasama," the man declared. Despite the praise, the young boy simply smiled, thinking to himself that this small-scale application suited his personality just fine. In the background, his father proudly displayed the magical harvest to the rest of the household. As he reflected on his new life, he recalled the moment it all began. He had been reincarnated into this world and blessed by a goddess with 3 skills, effectively making him overpowered. Everything had seemed perfect until that point. The skills granted to him were Earth Magic, Magical Array Magic, and, most significantly, Unlimited Magic Power. But a memory of the goddess surfaced, her playful expression tinged with something unsettling. He couldn't shake the ominous feeling she gave him, realizing his blessings might have come at a hidden cost, a surprisingly terrible draw. His sudden change in demeanor caught his father's attention. "Cain, what's wrong?" Luke asked. The boy quickly composed himself, shaking his head. "It's nothing." His quick dismissal did little to ease his father's concern, who continued to watch him with a worried expression. Later, the family gathered to discuss the results of his baptism. "What about your skills, Cain? What were you blessed with?" his mother, Lydia, asked gently. His sister Alice chimed in. "How many skills did you get?" Luke explained that Cain was blessed with 2 skills, Earth Magic and Magical Array Magic, and had also inherited healing magic from Lydia. Cain remained silent, realizing that his most powerful skill, Unlimited Magic Power, had remained hidden from his family's view. Hearing that her little brother had received 3 skills in total, Alice was ecstatic. "Whoa, good for you, Cain," she cheered, pulling him into a tight, celebratory hug that left the young boy wide-eyed and gasping. He was startled when his older sister, Alice, suddenly embraced him with a wide, cheerful grin. She excitedly asked if he, too, had received skills from their mother, Lionel. Still holding him close, she wondered aloud if she had also inherited any skills from their mother. In the background, their parents observed the exchange. Their mother, Lydia, expressed her confusion. While she understood earth magic, she had never heard of magical array magic. Their father, Luke, admitted his own ignorance on the matter and resolved to write a letter to a man named Benjamin to have him look into it. Meanwhile, Alice gently patted her younger brother's head, murmuring about his new earth magic skill. Their parents approached, with Lydia reassuringly stating that they could investigate the matter more thoroughly once they returned to their mansion. Luke concurred, adding that there was no point in worrying for the moment. Cain looked up at his father and voiced his agreement. His father's expression then turned serious. He leaned down and sternly instructed Cain that a person's status board is fundamentally private, not to be shown even to family. He emphasized that even attempting to view another's status is a grave breach of etiquette, a rule Cain would do well to remember. The warning surprised Alice, who realized this meant one's status was a secret kept even from the closest of family. Standing beside her, Cain quietly affirmed that he understood the gravity of the rule. He looked on, processing the new information. He mused internally that this world certainly had its own strict rules, unlike his old one, where cooperation often meant sharing information. He resolved, then, that he would also be the one to decide how to use his skills. When he eventually made friends, he would think carefully and determine for himself whether or not to reveal his status. He couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement at the thought of his new life truly beginning. He resolved that as soon as they returned to the mansion, he would immediately check his skills. Once back in the privacy of his room, he sat on his bed and summoned his status board. As he reviewed the list of skills, a sense of unease tempered his excitement. They were abilities he couldn't be entirely happy about. His eyes then caught something else on the display. There was more. His gaze fell upon a postscript from the goddess herself. Guardia's message explained that for Cain, who had not yet learned the magic manipulation skill, a critical limitation was being put in place. His unlimited magic power skill would be deactivated until he could skillfully control his magic. The news struck him with utter disbelief, and he clutched his head in shock. As if to mock his distress, a small, winking image of the goddess appeared, cheerfully urging him to learn magic manipulation quickly. While reviewing his status, Cain considers the blessing he received. He reasons that for Goddess Guardia to bestow such a gift, she must possess a certain level of authority. He also notes that his minor resistance to status ailments is quite good. He reads the full details of Goddess Guardia's divine blessing. It grants a 20% boost to individual restoration magic, a 10% reduction in its consumption cost, minor resistance to status effects, and a bonus skill, otherworldly language comprehension. He realizes this is an incredibly useful set of abilities. Overjoyed, Cain clasped his hands together in prayer, thanking Goddess Guardia for the bonus as a vision of her appears in his mind. His eyes then fall upon a nearby book, and a thrilling thought occurs to him. With his new language comprehension skill, he might finally be able to read. He beams, his mind racing with the possibilities. The thought of what he'll be able to do with magic from now on is still incredibly exciting. As he revels in his excitement, a knock sounds at his door. The Sanrose family's butler, Randolph, formally asks if Cain is present. Peeking out from behind the butler is Cain's sister, Alice. From inside his room, Cain responds, telling them to go ahead and that he'll be right there. He is informed that his father is calling for him in the reception room. Moments later, walking down the hall with Alice, Cain wonders what the summons could be about. He feels a pang of disappointment, as he had wanted to investigate his new abilities further. His sister, noticing his distracted state, abruptly gets in his face. "Cain, are you listening?" she demands, annoyed that he was ignoring her. Startled, he apologizes to his big sister. She pokes his cheek, explaining that she had a bad feeling when he shut himself in his room right after they arrived at the mansion. She correctly deduces that he was preoccupied with the matter of his new skill. Alice continues to playfully poke his cheek, having made her point about her concern. Cain simply endures the affectionate teasing. He is led to the reception room, his face flushed with excitement. The butler, Randolph, notes that Cain's sister, Alice, was treated similarly when she received her skill, having stared at her skill board until evening. His sister, however, is less than pleased. She whirls on him, demanding to know why he said that. Cain realizes his mistake. He had been late for dinner because he was absorbed in a book, a completely different situation. He quickly apologizes, admitting his mistake and explaining he was just trying to act like an adult. Randolph sighs, seemingly exasperated by the childish exchange. Flustered, Alice quickly changes the subject. She declares that since they've both received a skill from their mother, Lydia, they must treasure it. The boy can't help but laugh at his sister's childish attempt to regain her composure. His amusement only angers her further, and she demands to know what he finds so funny. Meanwhile, in the reception room, Cain's parents, Luke and Lydia, wait in a formal silence, sipping tea as a maid stands attentively in the background. They share a heavy, unspoken look, the mood in the room growing palpably tense. As Cain enters, the oppressive atmosphere hits him immediately. His father, Luke, breaks the silence, his voice grave as he begins to speak about the skill his son received that day. He continues, telling Cain not to be too downcast, a statement that leaves the young boy completely bewildered. The tension shatters as Luke suddenly apologizes, admitting he delivered his lines in the wrong order and was supposed to congratulate Kane first. As his wife looks on with secondhand embarrassment, Kane can only stare, baffled by his parents' strange behavior. He looked up at his father, asking why he should be so downcast. Regaining his composure, Luke Sanrose adopted a serious tone, confirming that Kane understood a fundamental truth of their world. In noble society, the skill one receives at their baptism ceremony determines their entire future. His father elaborated on the rigid paths laid out by these skills. Those who receive combat-related skills attend the Knight Academy to join the knightly orders. Those with combat magic skills go to the Magician Academy with a similar end. Others with political skills attend the Royal Academy to become bureaucrats for the kingdom or their territorial lords. The boy listened intently, a thoughtful expression on his face as the word "however" hung in the air, signaling a turn in the conversation. Luke's expression grew somber as he continued. He explained that he had investigated Kane's abilities. The earth magic he possessed offered no effective spells for attacking, even at higher levels. As for the magical array magic, its details were entirely unknown. He struggled to deliver the final blow, sweat forming on his brow as he uttered Kane's name. Beside him, Lydia looked away with a pained expression, admitting she didn't want to say what was coming next. He finally forced the words out, telling Kane that while a promising future lay ahead of him, it might not be one he could look forward to. As he spoke, Lydia covered her mouth, unable to hide her distress. The heavy words settled over the room, casting a pall over the family seated around the small table. For Kane, the implication was devastating. His eyes flew wide with shock as the realization struck him. His future was considered truly, utterly despairing. Seeing his son's despair, Luke quickly tried to console him, stating that being resourceful was a necessary skill and there was no need to be so sad. Lydia added that while she had complained at first, she accepted that Kane simply had a strong personality. She looked at Kane, tears welling in her eyes, and promised they would not abandon him. Overcome with emotion, she then lunged across the table, pulling her startled son into a tight, desperate hug. His family's distress is palpable. His father, Luke, covers his face in his hands, overwhelmed. His mother, Lydia, looks on with a pained expression, while the household maids watch with somber concern. He looks up, tears welling in his eyes, struck by the realization of how deeply they worry for him. His small hand clenches into a fist. He cannot bear to make these people sad. It wasn't like this in his previous world, where he was alone. With a sharp intake of breath, his expression shifts from sorrow to resolve. He pulls back from his mother's embrace, turning to his father with a sudden request. He explains his desire to learn the magic control skill, theorizing that it is required to use his earth magic. He asks his father if he knows a way to learn it, or, failing that, if he could have permission to investigate it himself in the family library. With newfound confidence, he declares that he will be fine. He believes that by mastering earth magic, he can achieve many things. He imagines using recovery magic to heal the people of their territory, or, if that proves impossible, simply using his skills to create statues. He turns back to his parents, reassuring them with a determined smile that everything is fine. His bright smile returns as he urges them not to worry so much. His parents can only stare, taken aback by his sudden maturity. Luke and Lydia are overcome with emotion. His father marvels at how accomplished his son has become, while his mother agrees, affirming that they cannot give up as there is still potential in earth magic. Their despair has transformed into pride. He is enveloped in his mother's embrace, tears of relief streaming down his face. His father, Luke, decides they should write a letter to someone named Benjamin, asking him to come home for the next break. His mother, Lydia, reassures him, promising they will work on this together. He agrees enthusiastically, suggesting they also have Benjamin investigate the magical array magic skill at the Magic Academy. His father considers this, believing that if it's Benjamin, he likely knows how to acquire the magic control skill. His father chuckles, admitting to his wife that his earlier comment about the other world not being solely about battles was said with a bit of spontaneous enthusiasm. Alice watches her parents from nearby. The boy, filled with a renewed sense of purpose, clenches his small fists. He reflects on how kind everyone is to him and makes a firm resolution to work hard so as not to disappoint them. He looks up, a serene smile on his face as a profound thought settles in. He is only 5 years old, but by the standards of this world, he has another 50 years ahead of him. He decides he should enjoy this long life. His thoughts then drift to the brother his father mentioned, Benjamin, who is currently attending the Magic Academy. Kane gazes out the window, pondering this new connection. But a sobering realization would soon follow. He was about to learn that the path of magic was not a gentle one. The scene shifts to a classroom, where a magic teacher harshly reprimands a student. The student is stunned, having not heard about a surprise magic test, while the teacher yells at him to focus, warning that with such an attitude, he couldn't even defeat a single goblin. In stark contrast, another figure stands as a beacon of talent, a young man who would unlock the very possibilities of magical array magic. With a confident air, he unleashes a torrent of crystalline energy from a pedestal, a glowing magic circle at his feet. The display leaves his peers and teacher in utter disbelief. One student claims it must be a lie, while another calls him a bundle of talent. The teacher confirms his status, declaring him the greatest prodigy since the founding of the Magic Academy. This legendary student, a prodigy in his own right, was none other than Benjamin Sanrose. With a confident smirk, he effortlessly shatters a crystal in his hand. It was this fated encounter with his big brother that would set the course for Kane's future. 6 months have passed since Kane resolved to do his best with his own skills. He still feels an impatient urgency, a feeling nearby Maid tries to temper by telling the young lord not to rush so much. His excitement, however, cannot be contained. With a bright beaming face, he thinks about how today is the day he has been waiting for. The day his big brother, Benjamin, returns. The maid is taken aback, not having expected Benjamin's return until the New Year's break. Just then, Kane's father, Luke, intervenes with a stern command. He informs Kane that they have decided to teach him magic control now that Benjamin is back, but warns that using magic without proper training can cause it to go haywire and potentially lead to the loss of his skills. Until he masters the technique, Kane is forbidden from using magic. At that moment, the main doors of the manor swing open. A confident young man with long, light-toned hair, dressed in a sharp uniform, strides into the hall as an attendant follows with his luggage. He is Benjamin Sanrose, the second son of the family, returned home. Seeing him, Kane's face lights up with pure joy, and he runs forward, shouting a warm welcome to his big brother. The family and staff gather to greet him. Randolph, the head butler, formally welcomes him, but Benjamin casually tells him to drop the young master title. He then turns his attention to his younger siblings, remarking with a smile how much both Alice and Kane have grown. He acknowledges Randolph's report that the children are well. The butler then informs the group that Lord Luke and Lady Lydia are waiting for them in the parlor. Reunited in the parlor, the family catches up. As Benjamin sips his tea, his parents ask about his journey and schooling, and he assures them there were no problems. Luke notes that Benjamin's research must be going well, revealing that at only 14, he has become an instructor at the Magic Academy, a first in its history. Kane listens, realizing just how capable his older brother truly is. Luke remarks that Benjamin, though only 14, is more level-headed than he is, a man with the mind of a 35-year-old. In response, Benjamin smiles and states that he has a request to make. At the Sanrose estate, the family discussion continues. Luke Sanrose, Kane's father, voices his hope that the young boy can acquire the magical manipulation skill during Benjamin's stay. This desire is echoed by the family, who note that Kane already possesses earth and restoration magic and seems eager to begin using them, making the control skill essential. Unaware of this conversation, Kane himself spends the time waiting for his brother by running laps around the 1-kilometer wall surrounding the house, diligently keeping himself in shape. Hearing their consensus, Benjamin turns to his younger brother with a confident, knowing smile. He accepts the responsibility without hesitation, simply stating, "Understood." Done. His brother's immediate and casual acceptance leaves Kane utterly speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief and a touch of confusion. The next morning, the lessons begin. Benjamin starts by confirming the information he has. He asks Kane if the 3 skills he was granted at his baptism were indeed magical array magic, earth magic, and restoration magic. He confirms that those 3 are correct, but internally hesitates. Kane knows he also possesses skills like infinite mana, but decides it would be better not to mention them, thinking it would only complicate matters. His younger brother's hesitation does not go unnoticed. Benjamin explains that while it is normally taboo to inquire about the numerical values of another's stats, this situation is important. He urges Kane to be honest and tell him everything. Kane reasons that if it's his big brother asking, it must be okay to say. Seeing this, Benjamin presses his advantage with a direct and serious question. "How much mana do you have now?" In response to the direct question, Kane states the number plainly, 1800. The number hangs in the air, leaving Benjamin utterly dumbfounded. His composed demeanor shatters as he stares in disbelief, demanding to know if Kane can possibly repeat what he just said. Kane, meanwhile, simply presents his status plate, where the impossible number is clearly displayed. He watched as his brother, still grappling with the number 1800, decided on a new course of action. Benjamin stated he would have to change his teaching method entirely, asking for Kane's arm to fit him with a special training device. Benjamin then fastened a bracelet-like device to his wrist. As he did, he instructed Kane to keep it on until he learned how to control his magic. Kane, confused, could only ask what the object was. The device immediately began to glow, humming softly as it activated on Kane's arm, taking him by surprise. Startled, Kane cried out that he felt something being sucked out of him. Benjamin sternly ordered him not to remove it, revealing that it was a magic absorber he had developed himself. As Kane felt his power draining away, Benjamin explained the device's usual purpose: to prevent magical criminals from using magic by draining all their power. He clarified, however, that this special version could be set to leave a certain amount of magic remaining. Benjamin noted that Kane's mana had already dropped by 10 points. He then announced that the stone on the device had glowed, signaling that Kane's magic power had been successfully reduced to a mere 10. With the boy's mana at a manageable level, Benjamin laid out the lesson plan. He explained they would start with a 4-stage method for acquiring magic control: focus, circulation, release, and sustain. With that, he asked if Kane was ready to begin. Kane began his first attempt, concentrating as instructed. He focused on the task of gathering his mana around his lower abdomen, asking aloud if he was doing it correctly. A moment later, a faint warmth bloomed in his abdomen as a soft glow of mana appeared around his hands. Benjamin observed, remarking that it was not a bad first try. The sensation vanished as quickly as it came. Kane reported that he had felt warmth under his hands, but it was already gone. Benjamin asked if he felt a change, prompting a confused look from his younger brother. His brother, Benjamin, smiled encouragingly. He instructed Kane to try and maintain that feeling of warmth, to keep it going even when he wasn't actively concentrating on it. 3 days later, Kane was still struggling. He dedicated himself completely to the training, but his attempts to control the water magic resulted in him being constantly drenched. As Benjamin watched with a contemplative look, Kane pushed himself to the point of exhaustion, collapsing into bed each night, having spent his days, as he put it, literally soaked. With a gasp of wonder, Kane stares at the sphere of water coalescing in his hands. The magical energy sparkles, a tangible manifestation of his newfound power. The effort, however, quickly leaves him drained. Slumped on the floor, he tells his teacher he's tired, but exclaims with pride that he finally managed to keep the magic from dispersing even without focusing. His teacher, a young woman with long, light hair, looks down at him and calmly states that he passes. His teacher, pleased with this result, declares that it's time to move on to the next step. Kane reacts with disbelief, complaining that he's as exhausted as he was in his previous life, when he worked 30 days straight. As he continues to feel the strain, his teacher asks if he'd prefer to call it a day, noting it's fine with her either way. Kane, however, feels his body is unusually stiff and tense. He asks what's happening, his thoughts drifting to his older brother Ben. In response, his teacher leans in with a sharp, serious expression. She delivers an ultimatum. If he doesn't learn magic control while she is there to guide him, he will be unable to use magic for about a year. Kane is stunned by the harsh condition. Her intense expression and the dire warning cause Kane to inwardly perceive her as a demon-like figure. He wonders if his brother Ben is similarly intense. Unaware of his thoughts, the teacher simply states that she will get ready for the next phase of training. She instructs him to begin by focusing. Kane complies, closing his eyes and concentrating. The sphere of water magic materializes in his hands once more, and he confirms he is ready. He maintains the sphere with a confident smile, thinking to himself that this is a piece of cake and that he's become quite smooth at it. From the side, his teacher observes and remarks that he might have a good deal of talent. Seeing his success, she gives him the next command. Acknowledging his performance as not bad, she instructs him to try moving the magic he has gathered up to his chest. He understands immediately, closing his eyes to concentrate. Visualizing the energy slowly rising, he commands it to move, his small hands trembling slightly with a focused effort. He strained for 10 minutes, his face contorted in concentration. Despite his best efforts, the ball of magic in his hands remained stubbornly inert. He realized with frustration that it wasn't moving at all. She observed his struggle from the side, noting that it seemed too difficult for him to accomplish all at once. Seeing him slumped on the floor in defeat, admitting it wouldn't budge, she offered to help him a bit. He meekly agreed as she moved behind him, placing her hands on his shoulders. She instructed him to try focusing once more. She then warned him that the process might hurt, but that he must endure it. As she spoke, the magic power in his hands began to gather into a dense, crackling ball, far more intense than before. He cried out in agony as a sharp pain shot through him. The concentrated energy was overwhelming. She remained unfazed by his cries, calmly stating that the pain was natural. She explained that they were forcibly expanding the narrow pathways within him, which would allow magic to flow more easily in the future. He collapsed to the floor, utterly spent, as the intense sensation finally subsided. His teacher looked down at him, offering a word of praise for his endurance. She gave him no time to rest, immediately outlining the next, far more complex task. She called it circulation, a trial where he must move the magic throughout his entire body, from his lower abdomen to his chest, head, hands, and feet, and then back again. Hearing the daunting instructions, Kane could only think to himself that this person was, as expected, a demon. She reflected on the events 5 days after what Kane now considered the intense pain incident. She conceded to herself that she might have been a bit too harsh, noticing that the boy had been giving her wary glances ever since. He suddenly burst into the room, his face beaming with pride and excitement. He triumphantly announced that he had finally done it and began to mention his big brother, Ben. However, his teacher quickly cut him off, stating that there was no time. Her eyes widened in disbelief, questioning if Kane had actually managed to perform the circulation technique. With a bright smile, Kane enthusiastically confirmed that he had. To prove it, he closed his eyes and began to concentrate, telling her to watch. A faint aura of magical energy started to shimmer around his small frame. The energy visibly flowed through his body, moving from his feet up through his torso as he guided the power along the path he had memorized. As he completed the circuit and brought the magic back down to his lower abdomen, he internally noted that the power now felt more concentrated than before. His teacher's face lit up with genuine delight as she praised him, exclaiming that he was amazing. Kane, beaming, then asked if he could make the magic power even bigger by circulating it. He felt a wave of relief, glad his efforts had paid off. He mused that his habit of practicing, born from his salaryman days of working overtime, had served him well, even when his brother Ben wasn't around to supervise. His teacher then issued a new instruction. He was to press his palms together in front of his chest and circulate the magic between them. As Kane attempted the maneuver, the energy crackled erratically, refusing to flow properly. He looked up, explaining that his magic power couldn't move because it was hitting a blockage in his right hand. His teacher acknowledged the problem and informed him that she would give him 3 options to resolve it. She laid out the choices clearly. The first option was for her to assist him directly, as she had before. The second was to make the magic power smaller and try again. The third was to make it bigger and try again. Kane's face filled with dread as he realized every option was bound to be painful, thinking she was acting like a demon once more. A sinister aura seemed to emanate from his teacher as she smiled and asked which he would prefer. He stands nervously before his teacher, who places a hand on his shoulder and suggests they try circulation again. She confirms his choice with a knowing smile, asking if he's sure about selecting the first option. With a desperate cry, he confirms his decision. Option 1. Following his choice, the teacher positions herself behind him. As Kane presses his palms together, he feels a surge of her magic flowing directly into his body, a powerful and unfamiliar sensation. The influx of power manifests immediately. A sharp, crackling energy gathers between his hands, and he realizes with a jolt that the form of the magic is becoming thin and pointed, like a needle. Kane cries out in agony as his female magic instructor holds his arm. An external force is being applied to his clasped hands, preventing him from pulling them apart. He screams that it hurts, his face contorted in pain. She calmly tells him that she will continue circulating the magic this way, praising him for his good work. The magic power has successfully entered his left hand, though the process is clearly painful for the young boy. Later, his father, Luke, stands over him as he sits on the floor. He explains that the act of releasing magic power outside the body is known as release. He notices Kane's tear-streaked face and asks if he said something. With tears in his eyes, Kane mentions the name Risetsu, a demon from folklore, and his brother, Benjamin. Luke, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, dismisses it as nothing. 2 hours pass. Kane is once again with his female instructor. She tells him that since magic has now passed through him once, it should be easier. She instructs him to make a circle with his hands slightly apart and circulate the magic. He succeeds instantly, releasing a crackle of energy. Kane looks up in shock, exclaiming that he managed to do it even without his hands touching, a feat he mentally attributes to his brother, Ben. His sister Alice and the instructor watch in surprise. His instructor, seeing his rapid progress, gives him a critical warning. If he ever feels he is about to lose concentration, he must immediately raise both hands diagonally forward and up. Nearby, his father adds that the final maintenance is dangerous, so they will train outside the castle walls. Kane listens as his father outlines the plan. First, he must master circulation to sufficiently hone his magic power, and only then move on to release. The boy presses his hands together, pondering the reason for the specific safety gesture. Following his instructor's next command, he begins to gather the energy. She tells him his form looks good and instructs him to stop the magic between his hands, forming it into a sphere. As he does so, a sphere of light forms. But Kane feels his magic power being continuously drained from his body. A sense of dread washes over him as he realizes the situation might be bad. His uncontrolled magic erupts in a violent explosion of force, throwing him backward as the ground shatters. His instructor is caught in the blast, her hair whipping around her. In the immediate aftermath, the instructor reprimands him, reminding him sharply that he was told to raise his hands diagonally forward and up if he lost concentration. She punctuates her words with a firm rap on his head, causing him to cry out in pain. She continues her lecture, her tone severe, stating that magic is not a toy. Pointing to the crater he created, she explains that he must take responsibility for its use, warning that if he hadn't followed her instructions, he could have been seriously injured. Later, standing before his father, Kane reflects on his actions. He admits to himself that since coming to this world and gaining the ability to use magic, he had gotten a bit carried away, treating it like a toy. Humbled by this realization, he turns back to his instructor. He acknowledges the danger, understanding that a single misstep could have been disastrous, and promises to follow her instructions properly. He then asks his big brother Ben to teach him again. He looks up at her with tearful determination, pleading for her to teach him the rest. He vows that he won't make excuses or complain anymore. Moved by his sincerity, the instructor smiles and agrees to start again from the beginning. 4 days pass. After 4 days of diligent training, a notification appears before Kane, announcing that the magic manipulation skill has been added to his abilities. He throws his arms up in triumph, cheering that he can now cast magic, while his instructor looks on with a pleased smile. The instructor holds up a hand, explaining that with this training, he will be able to attack without using spells. Kane bows his head, thanking big brother Benjamin. She congratulates him, noting that it's rare for skills to increase so quickly and acknowledging that he worked very hard. He put his new skill to the test, gathering his magic as instructed. A torrent of raw power erupted from his hand, exploding outwards in a blinding flash that engulfed the training area, much to his instructor's quiet observation. The violent blast tore through the earth, carving a deep, jagged crater into the ground where moments before there had been only flat terrain. As the dust settled, Kane stared in utter disbelief. His instructor, however, simply offered a serene, knowing smile. A wave of awe washed over the boy as he wondered if she was some kind of superpowered being from one of his old world stories. A single, unshakable conviction formed in his mind. He must never, ever disobey this person. 2 days after the new year, the time came for Benjamin to return to his studies. Kane and his sister Alice waved enthusiastically as their older brother departed, while their parents, Luke and Lydia, watched on with composed farewells. With his brother gone, Kane felt a surge of determination. He resolved that from now on, he would push his magical power to its absolute limit, recalling the overwhelming sense of accomplishment he felt during his intense training when he first mastered magic control. He glanced down at the magic-absorbing bracelet on his wrist. A sudden realization struck him. If he didn't take it off, he would run out of magic almost instantly. With a click, he unfastened the clasp. Having removed the restraint, he stood alone in the yard, ready to begin. He decided to use the method he had learned from his big brother. He closed his eyes, recalling Benjamin's voice guiding him. He was instructed to follow the directions, maintain focus, and circulate his magic to cast the spell Stone Bullet. Following the memory, Kane thrust his hand forward. Small stones lifted from the ground and shot forward, striking a nearby wall. His eyes flew open, wide with delight, as he realized with a cheer that he had successfully used magic. The boy ran in a joyful circle, absolutely thrilled. As he expected, being able to perform magic in this different world was an exhilarating feeling. He noted that it seemed he could use both stone and whole spells. He considered his options. The stone spell simply creates a stone, but the whole spell, he mused, could be used to follow and open. With a clap of his hands, he decided he would go with whole. He cast the spell, and a shimmering, circular portal opened in the ground before him, startling a nearby rabbit. Kane stared, amazed at the result. His amazement was cut short by a sudden wave of weakness. The training with Benjamin had ended at the new year, and now, on his own, he felt the consequences. He realized with a start that he was running out of magical energy. After being drained by the magic absorber, he only had 20 units left, and he now knew that was nowhere near enough. His magical exhaustion triggered an unexpected outcome. He had leveled up. A review of his status revealed the dramatic change. His level had risen from 1 to 2, and his age advanced to 6. While his physical stats saw minor improvements, his magic power had skyrocketed from a maximum of 1,800 to an immense 2,100, though his current reserves were almost entirely depleted. He jolted awake with a start, disoriented. The sun was setting outside his window, and he realized with a shock that he had slept through the entire day, from morning until evening. As he sat up, a strange sensation washed over him, a fullness of magic he had never felt before. He instinctively called forth his status and was stunned to see his magic power was now fully restored to its new, higher capacity, a direct result of no longer being near the magic-absorbing item. His mother, Lydia, suddenly appeared, her voice filled with excitement. She declared it was time for magic practice, but Kane quickly tried to temper her expectations. He knew he had only been using a tiny fraction of his power before, but he tried to explain that even that small amount felt incredible. Her enthusiasm shifted to parental concern as she noted it was nearly dinner time and asked where he had been for lunch. Kane froze, a wave of panic washing over him as he realized he would be in trouble if he admitted to practicing magic instead of studying. As he hesitated, trying to think of an escape, she called his name, stopping him in his tracks. Cornered, he put on his most innocent expression and quickly fabricated a story, claiming he had been studying the alphabet with his sister, Alice. To sell the lie and make his escape, he then added that he was a bit tired and wanted to go for a short walk. His mother's expression softened into a warm smile. Believing him completely, she apologized for doubting him and agreed that taking a break was necessary. Kane felt a pang of guilt for his deception and apologized for causing her worry. Having successfully escaped the conversation, he went outside, only to be met with another surprise. The shallow crater he had created with the whole spell was still there, perfectly intact. It hadn't reverted to normal even after so much time had passed. Staring at the hole he created, Kane realizes the water magic has a continuous effect. A flicker of concern crosses his face as he considers the danger. Someone could fall in and get hurt. He needs to find a way to erase it, and just then, an idea comes to mind. Following his newfound resolve, he raises a hand and utters a single word: delete. The hole vanishes in a flash of light. Kneeling down in astonishment, Kane marvels at the result. He now understands how to erase phenomena caused by magic. He feels a significant drain on his power, realizing that to delete a magical effect, it takes twice the amount of magic used for its creation. It's a spell that only a magician with a large reserve of power could use. The boy's face lights up with a determined grin. Undeterred by the cost, he decides to verify his new ability thoroughly, repeatedly creating and deleting holes to test his limits. He stands amidst his practice area, continuing his magical experiments one after another. With another focused shout of delete, he erases yet another magical construct, his expression one of intense concentration. As he continued his training, a thought solidified in his mind. With a confident nod, he concluded that earth magic might actually be a very good skill to have. The next day, Kane jolts awake in his bed, seemingly full of energy and ready for the day. He sits up, clenching his fist with a sparkle in his eyes, eager to do more magic training. Just then, his sister Alice appears in his doorway, holding a stack of books. She looks at him with a hint of melancholy, remarking that he's lucky to go outside every day while she is stuck studying again. She complained bitterly about her math studies, exclaiming that she didn't want to do them anymore. Her mother, Lydia, noted that Kane was always outside and wished Alice good luck with her studies for the day, while a tutor looked on. Meanwhile, Kane was indeed outside, ready to begin his own form of study. He decided to test the stone spell, focusing his will to manifest the object. To his surprise, a perfectly square block of stone materialized before him with a solid thud. He stared at the block, surprised. He had expected a regular, rough stone, but instead, a perfectly formed block had appeared. Filled with renewed enthusiasm, he decided to continue his research into earth magic for the day. He continued his practice, and soon a pile of identical blocks stood before him. Breathing a little heavily from the effort, he mused that with the stone spell, he had effectively become a human stone manufacturing machine. Pleased with his progress, he reviewed his status, a wide grin on his face, and encouraged himself to keep up the good work. His moment of self-congratulation was cut short when his mother, Lydia, and sister, Alice, appeared behind him. Lydia, looking furious, shouted his name. She confronted him directly, revealing she had heard from Alice that he was supposedly studying. Alice chimed in with a complaint, declaring it wasn't fair that Kane got to play outside all the time. As their tutor looked on, Kane tried to defend himself, explaining that he had, in fact, been studying magic. But his mother was not listening. With a determined heave-ho, she grabbed him, telling him to come with her. He was promptly marched back inside and forced to sit at a desk next to his sister. With the tutor presiding over them, Kane could only let out a cry of despair. Forced to practice his letters, he lamented his situation. While his divine blessing allowed him to understand all languages, it made the task of endlessly writing characters he already knew feel like a special kind of torture, like a 35-year-old man being forced to complete a workbook designed for a child. Despite the daily drudgery of his lessons, time passed. He looked up from his work, noting that months had now gone by since his older brother, Benjamin, had returned home. He reflected on the fruits of his continued training. His magic control had reached level 2, and his earth magic had skyrocketed to level 21. Furthermore, learning magic control had finally activated his unlimited magic power skill. This incredible progress, however, was contrasted by the sheer agony of his academic lessons. As a grim bonus for enduring the study sessions with his sister Alice and their tutor, he had even acquired a new skill: avoid studying. Utterly drained, he desperately tried to escape, enthusiastically suggesting they go outside to observe plants for the sake of science. Having come to understand his skills better, Kane examines his status. He sees that both his earth magic and magic manipulation have leveled up to 2. A thought strikes him as he realizes this means he must have gained new spells, and he eagerly checks to see what they are. He looks closer and confirms he has gained 3 new spells. The status screen details the level 2 abilities: Earth Wall, which creates a 1 cubic meter wall; Earth Dig, for making an 8 cubic meter hole; and Create Clay, which can form a small, 1-liter object. Considering these new options, Kane reflects that while Earth Wall seems promising, the other 2 feel a bit iffy. He acknowledges that most people would likely consider earth magic to be a dud, not particularly useful or powerful. He dismisses the thought for now, deciding to practice regardless. He resolves to use the Earth Wall spell as a target for his other offensive magic, planning to test it out right away. Putting his plan into action, Kane stands outside and chants. A solid wall of earth erupts from the ground before him. With his target now in place, he raises his hands to cast his next spell, Stone Bullet. He fires a projectile, which smacks hard against the wall, but fails to break it. Surprised that a single stone bullet wasn't enough, he decides to test just how many shots the wall can endure. After the 10th impact, the earthen wall finally shatters and crumbles into a pile of rubble. Kane notes its decent durability, just as a man's voice calls out from behind, asking if Lord Kane is practicing his magic. He turns to find a large, muscular man smiling down at him. Kane recognizes him as Gardy, the gardener and coachman for the Sanros household. Gardy leans on his hoe and praises the young boy for working so hard. Gardy is a man of 30 with a formidable appearance, marked by a scar above his left eye and a missing arm. He sustained these injuries during a monster extermination mission, after which he was hired by the Sanros family. Despite his intimidating look, Gardy is known to be very kind. Even with only one arm, he skillfully manages the household's carriage, as well as the vegetable garden and flower beds, demonstrating his high ability. The gardener, Gardy, mentioned his plan to plant sweet potatoes soon, as winter was approaching. He thought it would be a good idea to make a field specifically for them this year. Seeing the man's thoughtful expression, Cain asked what was on his mind. He immediately lit up at the mention of sweet potatoes. They were a precious source of sweetness in this world, but to him, they were a fond memory from Earth. He declared his love for them, explaining that they are especially delicious when roasted, sweet, and absolutely great. His enthusiasm amused Gardy, who then turned his attention to a pile of rocks, stating he needed to clean them up. As Gardy announced he would go till the field, Cain wished him good luck. As the gardener walked off, a mischievous smile spread across Cain's face. Deciding the area was now cleaned up, he raised a hand, commanded, "Delete," and a brilliant flash of light enveloped the spot where the rocks had been. Sometime after that, Gardy began the arduous task of tilling the field with his rake. The work was slow and difficult. The soil was hard-packed, and he had to pull out countless weeds and stones scattered throughout the plot by hand. Watching him toil, Cain realized just how tough the job was. The thought prompted him to look down at his status screen, a plan forming in his mind. He reviewed his list of spells: Earth Wall, Earth Dig, and Create Clay, all available at level 2. With a sudden burst of inspiration, he called out, "Hey, Gardy!" The gardener turned, surprised by the young master's shout. Cain ran toward him, eagerly asking if he could help with the field, his voice full of pleading. With a bright, confident smile, he revealed his true intention. There was a specific earth magic spell he was eager to test. He stood before the difficult patch of land, his small hands clenched into tight fists. With determination, he prepared to unleash his earth magic. Gardy, the muscular, one-armed gardener, turns to young Cain with a curious expression. He asks if there's a particular earth magic the boy wants to try out. Cain, his large eyes wide with interest, eagerly asks what exactly Gardy has in mind. Out in the field, Gardy stands with a large rake, contemplating the task ahead. Cain calls out to him, asking how large he plans to make the new sweet potato field. Gardy pauses, considering the question, and suggests a certain size while gesturing to the ground. He then clarifies the dimensions for Gardy, about the size of a badminton court, 12 meters by 6. With the area established, Cain tells Gardy to stand back a bit as he closes his eyes and begins to concentrate, a faint magical aura gathering around his hands. With a shout of Earth Dig, he unleashes the spell. The ground erupts in small, controlled bursts, soil turning over as if tilled by an invisible plow. Cain watches, his hand covering his mouth in awe at the result. The effect is immediate and astounding. Gardy kneels, touching the freshly turned earth in disbelief. He exclaims that the once hard soil became soft in an instant, marveling at the power of earth magic. He explains that he thought the Earth Dig spell, which tills and softens the soil, would be perfect for creating the field. He notes that while it's on a small scale now, he imagines that as his level increases, he could till hectares of land. Hearing this, Gardy's enthusiasm ignites. He agrees enthusiastically, and Cain, matching his energy, declares that he'll keep casting the spell nonstop until the entire area is prepared. True to his word, he continues until the entire plot of land is perfectly tilled. Cain announces that he's done, and Gardy stares in amazement at the finished field, a task that would have taken him 10 days to complete by hand. He clasps his hands together, thanking Lord Cain profusely. He feels a bit embarrassed by the effusive praise. Gardy, however, is genuinely grateful, explaining that it takes him a long time to till soil with only one arm. Thanks to Cain's magic, he can now use that saved time for other work. He reflects on the man's words, realizing that farming in this world is a tough endeavor. Gardy agrees, and with the field ready, he cheerfully announces that he'll go get the seed potatoes right away. He smiles, pleased with his work, as Gardy approaches carrying a sack of sweet potato tubers. The gardener announces that he has brought them, and Cain expresses his hope that the earth magic he used has made the task of tilling the fields a bit easier. Gardy, however, kneels down with a look of confusion. He asks if Cain intends to plant the tubers as they are, questioning why he isn't making them into seedlings first. He elaborates on their local farming practices, explaining that they always plant sweet potatoes directly as tubers, not from seedlings. The concept seems foreign to him. The gardener's words trigger a memory from Cain's past life. He recalls his junior high school tech teacher explaining that for a good harvest, sweet potatoes must be grown from seedlings. A sudden realization strikes him. The agricultural knowledge and techniques of this world are completely different from his own. Determined to apply his knowledge, he turns to Gardy and asks if he can spare some of the seed tubers. He declares his intention to grow his own sweet potato field right next to the one they just prepared. Gardy readily agrees, and Cain thanks him. Having received a tuber, he kneels down to examine it closely, deep in thought about his next move. He looks up and asks Gardy what they should do for planters to grow the seedlings. Gardy scans the area, but confirms he doesn't see anything suitable. Cain's gaze drifts to his own hand as he wonders if he can create what they need with magic. A look of determination crosses his face. He decides to give it a try, focusing his will and commanding the earth. Create clay, he incants, follow my will and form it. He realizes this might be a usable application of his power. As he concentrates, magical energy gathers around his hands. The soil before him begins to shift and coalesce, taking the shape of a rectangular planter box. The process completes, leaving a perfectly formed planter box on the ground. He throws his hands up in triumph, exclaiming, "Yes, I did it." He proudly presents the finished clay planter, his face alight with excitement. It's not bad for a first attempt, he thinks, realizing that his create clay magic could be used for all sorts of things. As Gardy looks on with an encouraging smile, Kane's mind is already racing ahead, wondering if he could try making tableware next. Several days pass, with the sweet potato seedlings now nestled in their new clay planters. Kane's patience is rewarded. He peers over the edge of the planters, his eyes wide with delight as he sees that the seed potatoes have successfully sprouted. In the family's field, Gardy marvels at the successful crop. He notes that while his own field had sparse germination, every single one of the seed potatoes young Lord Kane planted has sprouted. Kane, standing nearby, quietly acknowledges that it's true. He thanks Gardy for his help, but his mind drifts to a memory from his past life. He recalls his teacher explaining that planting sweet potatoes from seed results in a low germination rate and doesn't increase the yield. This confirms what Gardy had previously told him. Realizing the discrepancy in agricultural knowledge between his worlds, Kane turns to Gardy with an idea. He suggests they make a ridge, but the term leaves the gardener completely baffled, prompting him to ask what a ridge is. Seeing his confusion, Kane decides it would be better to demonstrate. He tells Gardy he will explain after he makes it, and then prepares to use his magic, declaring, "First, let's till the field." Earth dig. A burst of magic erupts from Kane's hands, instantly carving a massive hole in the ground. Gardy watches in stunned silence, as Kane internally notes the excavation is roughly 6 meters by 6 meters, a much larger result than intended. The displaced soil forms a perfectly neat, raised bed of earth. Gardy stands with his arms crossed, observing the miraculous and instantaneous transformation of the field. With the task complete, Kane pumps his fists in celebration, exclaiming that they did it. Gardy looks on, a wide smile of pure amazement on his face. He then explains the concept to the astonished gardener. This raised soil, called a ridge, improves drainage, gets more sunlight, and raises the soil temperature, helping crops grow better. Internally, Kane credits his junior high teacher for the knowledge, while Gardy expresses his immense respect for the knowledgeable young lord. Gardy is utterly floored, marveling at the existence of such an effective farming method he had never known. His awe quickly turns to intense curiosity. He grabs Kane, his expression serious, and demands to know where he acquired such knowledge. Caught off guard, Kane hastily claims it was a skill taught to him by his earth magic. He felt a pang of guilt, apologizing internally to Gardy. The gardener, however, was completely oblivious, marveling at how versatile the earth magic skill was. Later, during his studies, he reflected that his earth magic had finally proven useful and considered other applications. Nearby, his sister Alice let out a sigh, stumped by another arithmetic problem. Their tutor noticed her struggle, observing that while Lady Alice could handle single-digit addition and subtraction just fine, she had trouble with more complex two-digit problems. The tutor proposed they try breaking the calculations down step by step. He watched his sister, thinking to himself that if she could manage single-digit calculations, she should be able to solve two-digit ones with a bit of effort. The thought felt strange, coming from the mind of a 35-year-old man in a child's body. An idea suddenly struck him. He wondered if a tool like an abacus existed in this world. He realized that since an abacus could be used without electricity, it would be incredibly useful here. If such a tool existed, it would surely be a great help. With a new plan in mind, he cheerfully announced to a confused Alice that after their class, they would make an abacus. He then prepared to describe its shape. He recalled his past life, remembering that he was actually quite knowledgeable about the abacus, having been a rank Dan holder. Though it wasn't a skill he could put on a resume, it gave him a clear image of what to create. This would be the first time he attempted to make something so complex with his magic. He focused his mind, visualizing the device and its functions: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Concentrating his power, he commanded, "Create clay," and then willed it to take shape according to his precise instructions. He manipulates the swirling dust and earth, magically shaping it into a rectangular frame filled with rods and precisely formed beads. As the magical energy dissipates, the completed device materializes before him. Kane gasps in awe, amazed at his own creation. He picks it up, his face beaming with pride. Exclaiming that it's finally done, he notes with satisfaction the rattling sound of the moving parts. Eager to test it, his fingers flick one of the beads, sending it clacking against the frame. Kane collapses in tears, his magically created toy shattered on the floor before him. He cries out in frustration, realizing his mental image of its strength had been insufficient. He closes his eyes, his expression hardening with resolve. He decides to remake it, but this time, he will imagine it to be as unyielding as iron. Following his own instructions, he commands a magic to first create clay and then shape it. A new object materializes in a flash of light, a sturdy abacus. He looks on, amazed that it held together perfectly. He begins to use it, finding the clicking of the beads to be fun, almost like playing a musical instrument. He acknowledges that for a beginner, it might be hard to focus, but for someone who enjoys acrobatics, it's an engaging challenge. Holding his creation aloft, Kane beams with pride. He has made something truly satisfying and useful. With a surge of determination, he thinks of his sister, Alice, believing this new tool might allow him to help her. He notes that while the beads are a bit stiff and the sound is slightly bothersome, the most important thing is that it won't break. He then considers the origin of his idea, wondering if a similar calculating device already exists. The thought is a bit discouraging, but he resolves to ask his mother, Lydia, about it, wishing his brother Benjamin were there to consult. He plans to make more abacuses of different sizes as references. In search of his mother, Cain peeks into an office and stops short. He sees his father, Luke, sitting alone at his desk, looking utterly exhausted and troubled. His father's head is buried in his hand. Luke mutters in despair, questioning how he will ever manage to pay back the family's debt. Having overheard the word debt, Cain rushes off. He finds a maid and urgently asks for his mother. The maid, startled, tells him Lady Lydia is in the library. As Cain thanks her and runs on, the maid is left standing in stunned confusion. She was startled as the young master, Cain, suddenly rushed past her. Clutching the abacus he had just created, he wondered aloud if the talk of debt he'd overheard was truly real. He thought about the 6 years he had lived with everyone in this new life. The possibility that this debt could tear his family apart filled him with dread. He couldn't bear the thought of seeing their sad faces and felt a wave of helplessness, questioning what he could possibly do. But then, a surge of defiance washed over him. Clenching his fist, he resolved that he would not let that happen. Anything but that. His mind raced. He had his earth magic and, more importantly, the knowledge from his past life. A plan began to form. If he could use these unique assets, he might just be able to save them all. His ambition soared. He would make the country bigger and more prosperous. The path forward was clear, a complete territorial reform. With the Samrose family's financial difficulties now clear, Cain resolves to reform the territory to help them. Clutching a small abacus, he feels a surge of determination, but immediately wonders where he should even begin. He decides his first step is to ask his mother about the abacus and runs through the manor's halls. A sense of urgency grips him. If he hesitates, it might be too late. He clutches the abacus, pondering what he can possibly do right now. His thoughts then shift to another potential resource. He recalls hearing that his ancestors collected all sorts of things, leaving the family with more books than a typical Viscount household. He arrives before a large, imposing door, realizing with a bit of frustration that he's still too young and hasn't been given permission to enter. Peering up at the doorway, he wonders aloud if this is the archive. He calls out, hoping to find his mother, Lydia, inside. A voice from within invites him to come in. As Cain enters, the rich smell of old leather and paper wafts through the air. He is stunned by the sheer volume of books lining the walls. In the center of the room, his mother sits at a desk, writing, and calls out his name. She turns to him, a warm smile on her face, and notes that this is his first time here. Lydia remarks that since he just started learning to read, he must be eager for books, and promises to ask his father for official permission for him to enter. Cain is momentarily flustered, feeling the atmosphere is different than usual and wondering if it's his presence causing it. Lydia then spots the book in his hands and asks what it is. He stammers, explaining there's something he wants her to see. He points toward the high shelf, saying that a glowing book on the top right just slipped out. Lydia looks toward the shelf, confused, and asks which book he's talking about. Following his gesture, she scans the indicated bookshelf, but sees nothing unusual. She turns back to him, stating that it doesn't look like it's glowing to her at all. The book in question, however, is filled with extraordinary knowledge. Its pages detail methods for rice cultivation and creating seasonings like miso, soy sauce, and ketchup. It even discusses using magic to recreate electrical appliances. Cain becomes completely engrossed, studying the text with his abacus nearby as Lydia watches over him. He holds the book aloft, its cover shimmering with a magical light only he can see. He reads the title aloud, The Hero's Tome. As he wonders what this incredible book is, Lydia stares in utter disbelief. She leans in, her voice filled with shock as she asks, Cain, can you read that book? He is startled by his mother's panicked cry as she shouts for his father, Luke, and the butler, Randolph. As the book, The Hero's Tome, glows before him, a shocking realization dawns on Cain. The script is Japanese. He can't help but read the words from his former life. As Cain would later learn from his father, the book was written 12 generations ago by an ancestor known only as the hero. It had been passed down through the Samrose family ever since, but at some point, the descendants had lost the ability to read the hero's writing. But in the heat of the moment, with his mother and sister watching, he knew it was a difficult situation to explain. He couldn't possibly admit that the writing was the native language of his past life. Instead, he played it off, claiming it was just a coincidence. His quick thinking paid off. After the incident, he was officially allowed to use the archive, with Randolph assigned to teach him how. This left Cain to quietly ponder the profound connection between his old world and this new world's hero. A profound realization struck Cain as he held the book. The hero of this world, he was a reincarnator, just like him. The book recounted the tale of a Japanese person summoned to this world to defeat monsters. Instead, he made peace with the king of the demons, had a child, and lived happily ever after. This very journal was the hero's legacy. Though he lived a new life, his longing for Japan never faded. so he left behind a summary of useful knowledge for any future reincarnators who might follow. He clutched the heavy tome, his mind reeling. He'd never thought there were other reincarnators, and to learn the hero was an ancestor from his own house was a shocking revelation. The book was a valuable source of information he would need to study thoroughly later. But before that, a new idea took hold. He declared to the empty room that he had something he needed to do first. He decided to make use of the book's inspiration immediately, recalling he hadn't been able to bring up the subject of the abacus before. Just then, his mother's voice called out from the library doorway. "Cain, come here." He entered the room where his parents were seated. "Ah, Cain, what's wrong?" His mother, Lydia, asked as his father, Luke, also turned his attention to the boy. Holding up a strange wooden device, Cain announced that he had something he wanted to show them. "What is it?" Lydia asked, leaning forward with curiosity. He presented the abacus, a frame with rods and beads. A flicker of doubt crossed his mind. He wondered if such a thing even existed in this world, and if an invention by a child would be taken seriously. His mother examined it, asking what the thing with all the balls was. Cain explained that it was called an abacus, a tool for doing arithmetic. "Arithmetic," his father repeated, his interest suddenly piqued. He begins his explanation to his parents, pointing to the device. The beads on the top, he clarifies, represent the number 5. His mother and father, Lydia and Luke, listen with rapt, if slightly bewildered, attention. Their minds struggle to grasp the concept. For a moment, they are simply stunned into silence, their expressions frozen in shared disbelief. Then, their astonishment erupts into joyous praise. "Amazing, Cain!" They both shout, their faces alight with pride for their brilliant son. Recognizing the invention's significance, Luke calls for his head butler. Randolph enters promptly, asking if he was needed. Lydia explains that with the device, calculations can be performed quickly and with fewer errors, asking him to examine it. Randolph accepts the abacus, his expression unreadable as he inspects it. He remarks that in his many years, he has never seen such a thing and asks Cain how he created it. Internally, Cain breathes a sigh of relief, his suspicion that the abacus is unique to this world now confirmed. He realizes the predicament. It's not normal for a 5-year-old to be so familiar with such a complex tool. He foresees a hassle of difficult questions if he doesn't come up with a good explanation. Panicked, he quickly denies any innate genius, instead attributing his knowledge to the hero's tome. He explains that the instructions were written within the book, though he sheepishly admits he hasn't finished reading the entire volume yet. Elaborating with enthusiasm, Cain explains that the tome included pictures and used the local language for its numbers, which allowed him to understand its function. He then simply used earth magic, as depicted, to construct it. He marvels internally at how the book made arithmetic so easy to grasp and thinks his sister Alice would love one. His father's expression grows serious. Luke looks from the abacus to his son and states the grave implication of this story. If the knowledge comes from the hero's tome, then Cain is the only person who can make them. Randolph, ever the pragmatist, immediately seizes upon this fact. He turns to the boy with a sharp, calculating gaze and asks, "Young Master Cain, how many of these can you make in a day?" He confidently explains that as long as the material is soil, he can work hard to produce 100 or perhaps even 200 abacuses in a single day. The gathered adults are stunned by this claim. The head butler, Randolph, eagerly asks if Cain would be willing to demonstrate, to which the boy readily agrees. With that, the family and staff gather around a table where a pile of fresh soil has been placed. Cain sits before it, while his father, mother, sister, tutor, and the head butler watch with rapt attention. He then announces his intent, commanding the earth to follow his will. With a cry of "Create clay," he begins to magically shape the material, his family looking on in astonishment. In an instant, a perfectly formed abacus materializes from the mound of earth, shimmering with residual magical energy. His mother, Lydia, immediately scoops him into a hug, calling him wonderful. His father, Luke, admits his surprise, while Randolph observes that this invention might be the very means to restore the Sanrose family standing. His father then makes a formal request, asking if Cain could make a few of these abacuses every day. Though Cain seems to wonder why so many are needed, he agrees that it's fine. Pleased with his son's compliance, Luke places a hand on his head, smiling warmly as he thanks Cain for his help. Alice watches the tender moment from the background, and so, before he knew it, a new routine began. Every afternoon was spent making abacuses. He gave one to his sister, who began practicing with her tutor, while Gardy brought him the soil he needed and his mother offered encouragement. With the production of 2,000 abacuses complete, Cain proudly announces his achievement. He had originally wanted to make one for his sister, Alice. Standing beside him, his father, Luke, gazes at the Commerce Guild's towering building and considers the future, remarking that if this venture succeeds, it could lead to royalties. He then turns to his butler, Randolph, instructing him to handle the necessary arrangements, which Randolph acknowledges with a simple understood. Though Cain doesn't grasp the full details, he understands a general idea perfectly and wonders if his father's ambitious plan is truly possible. Driven by curiosity, Cain accompanies his father. They arrive at the Commerce Guild, where the abacus he created is presented to a guild official. At first, the receptionist listens to their story with caution. But as the potential of the device becomes clear, his wariness transforms into beaming excitement, and he exclaims that it's amazing. The abacus is successfully registered, which involves the additional task of creating a new Nobles chapter, a necessary precaution for when similar products are inevitably made. Cain considers the implications. The receptionist had explained that the judgment for such registrations comes from Hermes, the god of all occupations, ensuring that no one can complain. He also noted that this process prevents disputes over authenticity should a copycat product emerge. Cain agrees with the logic. A few days later, official recognition arrives, declaring Cain the original developer of the abacus. The news brings immense joy to both his father, Luke, and his mother, Lydia. The financial success is immediate and overwhelming. Randolph managed to sell a single abacus for 3 gold coins, and a horse-drawn cart arrives, piled high with sacks of money. The total sales amounted to a staggering 6,000 gold coins. This prompts Cain to mentally review this world's currency system: copper, silver, gold, and platinum, with each denomination being 100 times more valuable than the last. He begins to calculate the equivalent in his former world's currency. The realization strikes him with the force of a physical blow. If a copper coin is worth 10 yen, then a gold coin is 100,000 yen, making the total sales an unbelievable 600 million yen. The sheer scale of the number brings a look of shock to his face that he hasn't worn since his days as a corporate employee, and he marvels at Randolph's skill as a manager. His father, however, is already focused on the practicalities. Luke explains to Lydia that while their urgent financial problem has been resolved, they must use this newfound breathing room wisely. He stresses the need to use the money carefully, prioritizing repairs to the castle walls and maintaining the roads before winter sets in. As his father dealt with the domain's affairs, Cain reflected on the man's dedication. He realized that being a lord meant caring deeply for the people and taking on many responsibilities. He then turned to his father, startling the man by eagerly offering to make even more abacuses, insisting he could still do more. Luke was taken aback by his son's continued enthusiasm, and so, after several more days of work, Cain completed an additional 1,000 abacuses. He watched as the butler wheeled away the large stack, informing his father that the task was done. Seated at his desk, Luke looked at his son with immense gratitude, thanking him for his contribution. He placed a hand on Cain's head, expressing how proud he was to have him as a son. He explained that thanks to Cain's efforts, the people of their domain would not have to go hungry. He then told Cain that he and Lydia had decided that even a child deserves a reward for such an achievement, and asked if there was anything he wanted. Cain, meanwhile, was simply glad that his earth magic could be so useful to people. He considered the offer. In his past life, he would have immediately asked for a share of the profits, but as a 6-year-old, money was useless to him. He admitted to himself that it was a rare opportunity, and it would be a waste not to ask for something, a sign that he hadn't quite shaken off the mentality from his previous life. Then, an idea struck him. He looked up at his father and declared his simple request, that the next time they roasted sweet potatoes, he wanted to have 2. His father was stunned by the humble request, asking if that was really all he wanted. Cain confirmed with a resounding yes and cheered, excited at the prospect of eating delicious sweet potatoes. His father, amused and touched, promised him 2, and Cain felt re-energized to continue helping develop the territory. In the quiet dawn hours of the San Rose estate, 2 maids begin their early shift. One yawns, remarking on how tough mornings are, while the other agrees, noting that almost no one else is awake at this hour. Their conversation is interrupted by a cheerful voice. Cain appears, startling the maids as he wishes them a good morning. He announces he is going for a run and will be back for breakfast, leaving them stammering a greeting in his wake. As he dashes off with a wave, the maids watch in amazement. One declares that since Lord Cain is so serious about his training, they too must be proper in their duties. The other agrees, though she adds that he is, after all, still only 5 years old. Their exchange catches the attention of the head butler, Randolph. He addresses the maids, instructing them to work quickly and efficiently. He notes their motivation and tells them they should learn from the young lord's example. Meanwhile, Cain begins his warm-up exercises in the yard. He has resolved to take immediate action to reform the territory, deciding that the first step is to build his physical strength and level up his skills. This morning run is just one part of a rigorous daily schedule he has created. He wakes at 6 to train his body, attends classes with his sister Alice until lunch, studies books in a library, and then practices earth magic and magic control. His regimen also includes practicing healing magic 20 times a day. 3 months of this intense training pass. Cain looks at his status plate with a proud smile, exclaiming that everyone's levels have gone up as a result of their efforts. He examines the plate more closely, noticing that his earth magic and healing magic skills now have new entries. Intrigued, he decides to inspect his earth magic first. His status reveals 2 new spells: Mud, which costs 20 MP to turn a patch of ground into mud, and Dry, which costs 30 MP to reduce the water content in soil. Having reviewed his new offensive options, he turns his attention to healing magic. He sees that his recovery magic has reached level 2, granting him a new ability, Area Heal. For 30 MP, it can restore minor injuries for everyone within a 3-meter radius. Cain is thrilled, realizing how useful it will be to heal multiple people at once. though he quietly hopes he never has to. He reflected on the healing magic he had received from his mother, Lydia. With this power, he felt a renewed determination to learn even more useful magic, aspiring to one day save many people. Before heading to the library for his studies, he decided to check on the sweet potato field. There, he found the gardener, Gardy, already hard at work. Gardy greeted him cheerfully, confirming that the sweet potatoes were doing great. The gardener elaborated, explaining that the field he had planted was also doing well, but then gestured toward another plot, noting that Milord Kane's field was even more amazing. Looking over the two distinct fields, Gardy marveled that the sweet potatoes planted from the ridges and seedlings in Kane's plot were amazing, with almost all of them having taken root. He admitted that while his own field was also rooting better than usual, it couldn't compare. Gardy enthusiastically suggested they grow a large crop to surprise everyone. Kane agreed, adding that if they tried planting seedlings from Gardy's field next year, the results might become even more amazing. With their inspection complete, Kane announced he would head back to the mansion. He asked if Gardy would stay to watch the fields longer, but Kane decided against it, saying he would walk back with him. Gardy, though slightly surprised, readily agreed. He suggested they relax after they cleaned off the dirt from their work. As they walked, Gardy suddenly stopped, his expression turning to one of alarm as he looked at the path ahead. He pointed out that the road to the mansion was a muddy mess from the previous day's rain. Gardy worried that if ruts formed before it dried, the master's carriage wouldn't be able to pass. He concluded they needed to put down some sand, just as Kane stared at the mud, a new idea taking shape in his mind. While studying a tome on magic, Kane has a sudden realization. He believes he can apply his newly learned earth magic to the current situation. He turns to Gardy, who apologizes for the delay and offers to fetch some sand. Kane reassures him, stating he can handle it and that Gardy can head back on his own. As he begins to walk away, Gardy looks back with concern, calling out a warning to the young lord. In response, Kane clenches his fists with determination and gives Gardy a new instruction. He asks for a tool shaped like a large spatula or a board, something that can be used to flatten and level the ground. Though surprised, Gardy agrees. His hands plunge into the wet earth, and he recoils slightly from the cold, wet sensation of the mud. He then channels his magic, crying out mud as the ground begins to glow. He steels himself, thinking that he can handle it and that this is to help everyone. The spell, which he internally dubs mutification, takes effect, and he wonders if it worked. Just then, Gardy returns, carrying a large wooden plank. He announces his return, and Kane welcomes him back, immediately asking if they can use his magic to flatten the now muddy road. He puts the plank to use, amazed at the result. He realizes this effect was also Lord Kane's doing, noting that the softened earth makes it much easier to level out. The work proceeds with remarkable speed. Gardy exclaims that it's easy and much faster than usual. Pleased with the outcome, Kane gives a nod of approval. With the ground perfectly smooth, Gardy remarks that all they need to do is wait for it to dry. Kane stops him, announcing he has another new spell. He raises his hands and invokes his magic, shouting dry. A wave of magical energy washes over the flattened path, instantly solidifying the mud into dry, hard earth. Gardy stares in utter disbelief, exclaiming that it's already dry. He watches as Gardy marvels at their work. The man crouches, touching the ground in disbelief, exclaiming that it's perfectly flat. With this new surface, he notes, horse-drawn carriages will be able to pass through without any trouble. Seeing Gardy's enthusiasm, Kane proposes they take it a step further. He suggests they flatten the entire path before his father gets back, though he notes it's a bit strange that only this one section is so smooth. With a plan in place, the two work in tandem. In less than an hour, they manage to flatten the entire path to the mansion, with Kane casting his mud and dry spells as Gardy works the earth. Their project complete, Kane and Gardy throw their arms up in a triumphant cheer, celebrating their accomplishment. Gardy gives all the credit to Kane, thanking him profusely. He states that it was only thanks to the young lord's earth magic that they were able to fix the road so quickly. They share a celebratory high five. He smiles, feeling a bit excited as he wonders if his father will notice the change. Gardy then points out that they've both gotten quite dirty from the work and suggests they go to the well together to clean up. Sometime later, Kane is back in his room, diligently studying at his desk. His concentration is broken by his father's voice booming from the hallway, calling his name. The door flies open, and his father, Luke, storms in with a look of intense shock. He demands to know if Kane is the one who flattened the path to the mansion. Kane, startled, confirms he is inside and asks what's wrong. Faced with his father's intensity, Kane's confidence wavers. He asks worriedly if what he did was a bad thing, explaining that he and Gardy only meant to flatten the ruts to make them less noticeable. Luke's demeanor softens immediately. He apologizes for startling him and reassures him that it's not a problem at all. In fact, it's the opposite. Luke explains his dramatic entrance. When his carriage passed through the mansion's gate, the constant vibrations suddenly and completely stopped, leaving him to wonder what was going on. He praises Kane for a job well done, declaring he's never seen a road so flat and beautiful. As a reward for his excellent work, he offers his son an allowance. He watched as his father placed a gleaming silver coin into his small, outstretched hands, his first earned allowance. Beaming with joy, he immediately declared his intention to split the reward with Gardy. His father looked on, smiling, glad to see his son so happy and generous. His father, however, gently placed a hand on his head, telling him to keep the coin for himself. He assured the boy that he would give Gardy a separate share, praising him for his kind heart. Several days later, as rain fell outside, an ecstatic Gardy informed Cain that he had indeed received a special bonus. Cain later found his father in his study to offer his heartfelt thanks. The boy then stepped outside, only to stop in his tracks. The once perfectly smooth path, the fruit of his and Gardy's labor, was now a muddy mess, riddled with puddles from a downpour. He stared in dismay, realizing all their hard work had been washed away. Cain contemplates the muddy path, frustrated. Despite his and Gardy's hard work flattening the road, he knows the next rain will ruin it. Wondering how people managed in the past, he has a sudden realization. They should build a cobblestone road. Having decided on a course of action, he begins to write down and summarize his plan. He recalls images of old European roads from books in his previous life, confident that he can replicate them with his earth magic using the existing stone and dirt. He finishes his proposal, a proud smile spreading across his face. Holding up the completed document, he feels certain this is the most efficient solution. His mind then turns to logistics. He knows he'll need Gardy's help and must also consult with Randolph. Realizing it's too large a project to start all at once, he decides on a trial run, pinpointing the area around the well as the perfect place to begin. Cain presents his written plan to his father, Luke, and the head butler, Randolph, eagerly asking for their assessment. Randolph takes the document, noting that the young master wrote it himself, while Luke looks on. As Randolph reads, he is visibly impressed. He silently reflects that young Master Cain already shows the qualities of a capable feudal lord. Looking up from the paper, Randolph smiles and confirms he understands the plan. He agrees to start work around the well the next day and will consult with Lord Sanros afterward. Cain beams, relieved and excited by the positive reception. Overjoyed, Cain shouts his thanks to the butler. Randolph calmly replies that it is no trouble at all. Randolph continues to analyze the proposal, estimating it will take about 5 days to complete all the paths in the mansion. Cain, impressed, confirms that his own estimate was similar, praising Randolph's amazing assessment skills. The butler mentions the household policy of not having surplus labor costs. Cain counters that by increasing the number of workers slightly, they could shorten the schedule. He promises to do his best to improve the project even further. He looked up, startled, as the head butler addressed him. Randolph's eyes were closed, his expression unreadable as he called him young Master Cain. The butler continued his assessment, remarking that since Cain's injury and time spent Bedridden, he seemed like a completely different person. He noted that the boy had become quite strong. Randolph's sharp observation sent a jolt of panic through Cain. As the butler gave a slight, respectful bow, the young boy's heart pounded in his chest, suddenly terrified that his secret had been discovered. His fear, however, was misplaced. He looked up to see tears welling in Randolph's eyes. The head butler explained with deep emotion that the entire staff was simply overjoyed at their young master's remarkable growth. Moved by the butler's sincerity, Cain clutched the rolled-up plans, his expression hardening with resolve. With Randolph standing supportively behind him, he vowed to make the stone paving project a success and give it his all. At the well behind the Sanros mansion, young Cain cheerfully greets Gardy. They have arrived to begin their planned project, paving the surrounding area with stones. Holding what appears to be a blueprint, he explains their first step is to mark out the area that needs to be paved. He then instructs Gardy to follow the shape of the stone he is about to create. With a flash of magic, Cain conjures a single, perfectly square stone slab. Gardy agrees to the plan, and Cain announces that the rest of the stones are next. Using his earth magic, he begins to manifest a series of identical stone slabs out of thin air. In an instant, a towering stack of 300 perfectly formed stones appears. Gardy stares in disbelief, asking if this is what Cain intended, while the boy stands proudly beside his creation. They fall into a rhythm. After laying about a quarter of the stones, Cain explains their process. He will turn the ground to mud, and Gardy will arrange the stones. He asks Gardy to continue, and the man enthusiastically agrees. For the final touches on a completed section, Cain raises his hands and casts a spell to dry the mud, instantly solidifying the pavement. The result is a perfectly paved circular patio around the well. Gardy cries out in delight, declaring the project a success. Gardy marvels at the new stone pavement, noting how it will prevent puddles by allowing water to drain through the gaps. Cain, however, expresses some dissatisfaction. He finds the slight unevenness of the soil and the arrangement of the stones bothersome, a detail Gardy hadn't even noticed. Looking over their work, Gardy observes that at their current pace, they can only cover a narrow area each day. He concludes that they will need to devise a new plan if they are to pave the much larger path in front of the mansion. He cheerfully tells Gardy that when the time comes, they'll need him and Randolph to join in on the next project. Suddenly, a voice calls his name. It is his mother, Lydia, her expression a mixture of shock and concern. She explains she came looking for him since he missed lunch, only to find him covered in mud once again. Her maternal instincts taking over, she embraces him but quickly tells him to go get changed. In the background, Kane begins wiping the grime from his face. He tries to brush off her concern, but she holds him close, warning him that he's going to get her clothes dirty. Kane's face falls as he realizes he has made his mother angry yet again. Lydia, however, turns her attention to her husband, Luke, who has appeared nearby, stating that they need to discuss this with him as well. The situation had escalated because, after lunch, Kane and Gardy had immediately returned to the well to resume paving the area with stones. Gardy looks on with a mix of awe and confusion as Kane works, noting to himself that while it's all going according to plan, he made a promise. As he continues his work, Kane looks up to see his father, Luke, and the head butler, Randolph, approaching with stern expressions. He instantly deduces that his mother must have told them about the stone paving project. With their eyes upon him, he feels a renewed resolve, knowing he absolutely must finish the job to the very end. With that final push, the last of the perfectly crafted stone slabs settles into place. Kane sits back on the newly paved ground and throws his arms up in triumph, shouting that it's finally done. Gardy rushes to his side, congratulating Lord Kane and expressing relief that they managed to finish before dinner time. Luke and Randolph now smile, clearly impressed by the boy's accomplishment. Looking toward the grand mansion, Kane smiles softly to himself. He wonders if his mother's presentation of the project to his father went well, suspecting her intervention was what brought them out to see his work. He stood before his father's desk, the butler Randolph at attention nearby. Luke, with a serious expression, made an official request. He wanted Kane to pave the path to the mansion with stones. The boy's eyes widened in surprise, questioning if this was truly being offered as a job. His father continued, explaining that he had already heard the details from Randolph. The stone paving was, in his words, amazing. With such a path, he mused, they would no longer have to worry about mud, even on rainy days. Kane beamed with delight, thanking his father for the praise. Internally, a triumphant thought took hold. With this official commission, he could now practice his earth magic as much as he wanted. In his father's study, Kane hesitates to voice his full request. After mentioning the completion of the path to the mansion, he trails off, believing his next idea is probably too much to ask. The butler, Randolph, observes the exchange and remarks to Luke that it is a rather reckless plan. He suggests that they should at least discuss it with the relevant parties. His interest piqued by the butler's comment, Kane turns to his father. He insists that since the topic has been raised, he is now curious and would like to hear the proposal discussed properly. Seizing the opportunity, Kane lays out his grand vision with startling ambition. He declares his desire to have the town's entire main street paved with stone, and for the work to be completed within 2 months. Randolph immediately dismisses the idea as unrealistic. Luke recalls that paving the 1-kilometer path to their own mansion took a year and cost 200 gold coins, forcing him to conclude that they must give up on this new project. Kane, however, pointedly asks if something specific is scheduled to happen in 2 months. A realization dawns on the young boy. He understands that this situation presents a great opportunity. Thinking to himself that they are here, he leaps to his feet, startling his father. I'll do it, Kane proclaims, acknowledging that rebuilding the main street is indeed a large-scale project. He confidently assures his father that he will devise a plan to finish the work quickly, arguing that by simply increasing the number of workers, it can be done. After a moment of consideration, Luke calmly agrees. Randolph, ever the professional, simply states, understood, accepting his lord's decision without further comment. Kane beams, exclaiming in victory. His father officially leaves the project in his hands, adding a final piece of advice, not to overdo it. The click of a closing door punctuates the end of the meeting. He instructs the head butler, Randolph, to cooperate fully with Kane on the project. Randolph readily agrees. Kane, meanwhile, feels the weight of the responsibility but clenches his fist, silently vowing to see the massive undertaking through to completion. His initial enthusiasm, however, begins to wane as the reality of the situation sets in. The next day arrives at the Sanrose estate. He now feels the immense pressure of the task ahead, a dark shadow falling over his face as the burden settles upon him. His thoughts drift to his sister, Alice, who is in the middle of her lessons. He worries about the upcoming meeting, the vast sums of money, and the large number of people required for the project, questioning if success is even possible. The tutor praises Lady Alice for correctly grasping how to use the abacus. As she works, Alice notes that it's a class day, reflecting that her younger brother Kane still has very few lessons scheduled. Kane watches from a distance, his expression thoughtful. He sees his sister's happy expression as she thinks about how wonderful it is when her magic makes people smile. She wants the people of their domain to be just as happy. Her sentiment reignites his own resolve. He bursts into the meeting room where his father and Randolph are waiting, apologizing for the delay. He internally scolds himself for being discouraged. Now certain that he will make the plan a success, he proceeds to explain the plan, using a drawing to illustrate his points for Randolph. He mentions incorporating feedback from Gardy about the difficulties of the work, adding details on how to ensure the stones are laid straight. Randolph listens intently, his expression growing serious. He points out that the plan seems difficult. Not only does over 70% of it rely on Kane's magic, but finishing in 2 months will require a very large number of workers. He continued to express his reservations, admitting that while he doesn't understand magic himself, the task seemed far from simple. Kane, however, brushed off the concern with youthful confidence, declaring that he was fine. He explained that while manually lining up the stones would be tough, the magical aspect of the plan was not as difficult as they imagined. His explanation prompted Gardy to seek clarification. The coachman summarized his understanding. Kane would use magic to create stones and turn the earth to mud, and then the workers would line them up. He then posed a critical question, wondering if Kane couldn't just use magic to change the earth directly into stone. The simple question struck Kane like a bolt of lightning. He slammed his hands on the table, a look of sudden, brilliant realization dawning on his face as he shouted Gardy's name. He excitedly explained his new train of thought to the coachman. Magic, he elaborated, is all about visualization. If he could properly form the image in his mind before casting the spell, he might be able to achieve exactly what Gardy suggested. Gardy listened, amazed by the young lord's insight. His mind now racing with a new possibility. Kane leaped from his chair, eager to test the theory immediately. He pointed towards the outdoors, suggesting they go try it, but quickly tempered his enthusiasm with caution, adding that it would be best to practice outside first in case of failure. Moments later, they stood in an open, dusty area of the estate grounds. Kane turned to the coachman and requested that he draw a few 1 meter by 1 meter squares on the ground for the experiment. Gardy readily agreed. With the squares marked out, Kane stood before them and clasped his hands, focusing his intent. He informed the two men that he would now prepare the magic, explaining his plan to start with a small-scale test and then gradually expand the effect. For the dance floor, Randolph explains they will need 51 stones. Kane prepares himself, understanding that this is his first time attempting to circulate such a large amount of magic power. To be safe, he knows he must focus on control. With his hands clasped, he concentrates intently. He unleashes his power, shouting a command for the earth to follow his will and take the form of stone. The ground erupts with magical energy as tiles begin to materialize from the dirt, startling both Randolph and Gardy with the sheer force of the spell. As the magic settles, a grid of stone tiles lies before them. Gardy observes that while the ground did indeed turn to stone, there are noticeable gaps between each piece. Randolph inspects the result and praises the boy, calling it a wonderful result for a first attempt. However, he points out that the gaps are inconsistent and the stones themselves are uneven, making the overall appearance less than perfect. Kane listens to the critique, a thoughtful but slightly disappointed expression on his face. He stares at the flawed stonework, his mind already working. Standing beside Gardy, Kane quietly wonders aloud how he can fix the imperfections. At that, Randolph offers a suggestion. Perhaps drawing lines on the ground first would make it easier to visualize the spell's outcome. A look of realization dawns on Kane's face as he exclaims that it's a great idea. With a new plan in mind, Kane casts the spell again. As he shouts stone, a new grid of tiles forms, this time perfectly flush against each other. He looks on, pleased to see that there are no gaps. However, Gardy points out a new problem. Where the drawn lines were curved, the resulting stonework is also distorted and not neatly lined up. Randolph explains to Kane that this is a natural consequence, as it's easier to visualize the magic following the lines he drew. Randolph continues, expressing his astonishment. He tells Kane that there has never been anyone who could alter magic in such a way. He explains that even when multiple mages cast the same spell together, they would only produce similar phenomena, but they lack the knowledge or ability to modify the magic itself. Gardy reflects that no matter the situation, one must never stop being resourceful and imaginative to find a new path. This sparks an idea in Kane. He brightly suggests using a board as a ruler to draw a perfectly straight line. With renewed determination, the group prepares for the next attempt, a good solution finally within reach. He beams with confidence, ready for his third attempt at mastering the spell. His determination earns him praise from Gardy, who watches on and remarks that Milord Kane is truly an amazing person. Believing the third time's the charm, Kane once again chants the spell, stone. As the magic begins to take shape, Kane's father, Luke, asks Randolph if the path to the mansion will truly be finished. The head butler confirms that the project is in its final stages of adjustment, expressing his eagerness for the Lord to witness his son's accomplishments. Just then, the young boy spots his father observing from the doorway and calls out to him excitedly. He proudly explains his method to his bewildered father. He will pave the entire area with stone cobbles, instructing the magic to follow the shape of the guide stones he has laid out. With a surge of magical energy, the ground transforms. A perfectly uniform, sparkling stone path materializes before them, stretching across the courtyard. Kane throws his hands up in triumph, shouting with joy at his success. He celebrates with a high five from a beaming Gardy. His father and Randolph look on, astonished. The head butler murmurs that if it's Milord Kane, perhaps even his most reckless plans are possible. Filled with accomplishment, Kane declares his next target, the main street. While walking through town with his family and retainers, Luke Sanrose explains that he is conducting a preliminary inspection for a new plan on Main Street. Nearby, his daughter Alice pouts, complaining that Kane can't be separated from her because he gets lost easily. She then declares that she's going to Main Street as well, feeling left out, prompting her father to ask if she was even listening. She continues to protest, arguing it's unfair that only Kane gets to go to town when she studies in her room every day. Exasperated but fond, Luke relents, telling her she can come along too. As this familiar family dynamic unfolds, Kane's attention is caught by an unpleasant smell in the air, a mixture of trash and food. His focus, however, quickly shifts to the street's construction. He turns to Randolph and asks about the width of Main Street. The butler confirms Kane's unspoken estimate is roughly correct, adding that the road gradually widens as it approaches the castle gate, eventually reaching a width of 8 meters. He continues his mental assessment, noting the street's total length is about 1 kilometer and that it slopes gently down toward the castle gate. He visualizes the road's design, realizing that its narrowing shape further from the gate serves a dual defensive purpose, slowing an invading force's advance while also making it easier for defenders to retreat. The young lord considers the implications. This public road cannot be treated like the private one at their mansion. He understands that closing it for construction would cause significant problems for the daily lives of the territory's people, and given its width, the work would take more than a day or two to complete. Suddenly, a solution sparks in his mind. He exclaims that they should create a scale model of the town. With this new idea, he decides to think about the project more slowly once he returns to the castle. Gardy questions if such a model is truly necessary. Kane insists that having one versus not having one makes a complete difference. He lays out his plan to return to the castle, make adjustments, and then summon the person in charge. Turning to Randolph, he requests an accurate map, survey results, or an introduction to someone with detailed knowledge of the town's layout. The butler understands, and Kane thanks him, expressing his reliance on him. Luke then addresses his children, instructing them that in the meantime, they should observe the town carefully. As Randolph gestures towards their carriage, Kane and Alice take in the sights of the bustling town. Kane, in particular, gazes up at the surrounding buildings, his expression filled with focus and determination for the task ahead. He stands with his butler, Randolph, outside the estate. Randolph notes that the person they are waiting for should be arriving soon. Kane thanks him for arranging the carriage, dismissing the trouble of the rough route as something he owes him for. His wait is short-lived as a young woman with long, light-toned hair arrives. She formally introduces herself as Noelle, the maintenance division chief, offering a polite greeting to Lord Kane. While Kane responds with a startled, "Why yes," Gardy, who is also present, looks on, completely starstruck. With the introductions made, Kane quietly turns to Gardy to ask for a favor. At the same time, Randolph suggests that the group should proceed to the conference room. As they walk, Gardy is lost in thought until Kane calls his name, startling him. The large man apologizes, admitting he was daydreaming. Inside the conference room, Kane bows to Noelle, thanking her for her help. Randolph gently touches his own cheek and reminds the young master that as a noble, he must not bow his head to his retainers. The butler then shifts the topic to the matter at hand, turning to Noelle to ask if she brought the map or the measurement results they had requested. In response, Noelle begins to lay out several large sheets of parchment across the table. When arranged together, they form a massive, detailed map of the capital territory. Observing the completed map, Kane remarks that it's too large and difficult to see, proposing that for the model, it would be better to scale it down to half the size. Noelle confirms they have smaller maps, but they're likely inaccurate. Kane then asks if she has anything that is about half the current map size. Their discussion is interrupted by the arrival of Gardy, who strains as he carries a heavy wooden pole across his shoulders, from which hangs a large sling filled with earth. He announces to Lord Kane that he has brought the large quantity of earth as instructed. Gardy asks if the amount is sufficient. Kane, looking pleased, declares it perfect and thanks him. Nearby, Randolph and Noelle can only watch in utter confusion, wondering what on earth the young lord is planning to do. He brings his hands together, focusing his intent. To create the model he envisions, he must first properly circulate and refine his magic, solidifying the image of the map in his mind. The onlookers finally understand his purpose. He is making a model based on the map from earlier. With his mental image set, he commands the earth to change, calling out for the creation of clay. In a flash of light, the raw material reshapes itself, and before the astonished eyes of his retainers, a perfect, miniature replica of the town materializes on the floor. The sudden and impossible creation leaves Gardy, Noelle, and Randolph utterly speechless, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. The town has taken on a complete, three-dimensional form, every wall and tower rendered in miniature with sparkling clarity. Noelle stares dumbfounded. She questions how it's possible that he could reproduce the entire town in such detail after only looking at the map and glancing at the real thing for a few hours, calling it unbelievable. Gardy, however, is simply amazed, praising Lord Kane's expected brilliance. He exclaims how convenient the model is, allowing the town's layout to be understood at a single glance. While the others are impressed, Randolph's expression is grim. He recognizes the immense strategic value and the danger it represents, realizing that if other noble families or the royal family learn of this ability, it would become a major problem. To create something so sophisticated in an instant, detailed enough to plan military strategies, is a terrifying power. Kane, however, remains humble admitting that since he had to rely on imagination for the parts he couldn't see, the model is still a bit lacking. As Kane continues his discussion with Noel, Randolph, and Gardy watch from the side. The butler murmurs that they must keep a close eye on the boy, as his potential could be used for good or evil. Unaware of their concern, Kane asks for the plans to be moved to a desk where it will be easier to see. The plans depict a wide, unpaved main street of the town, lined with buildings. Pointing to the edge of the road, Kane explains his idea for a gutter. He describes it as a ditch that would direct rainwater, preventing puddles from forming. Noel, unfamiliar with the term, asks him what a gutter is. He elaborates, noting the street's gentle slope toward the castle gate, and suggests that a gutter would solve the issue of water accumulation. Noelle expresses her admiration for his knowledge, but Kane humbly claims he learned it from a book and is still lacking. Gardy then asks what happens to the water after it flows into the gutter. Changing the subject, he asks Noelle how the town currently treats its wastewater. He mentions that while it would normally be handled by a sewer system, he knows their town lacks one. Noelle confirms his suspicion, stating that wastewater is simply drained outside the houses. The revelation shocks Kane, who finally understands the source of the bad smell in town. He is amazed that such an unsanitary method hasn't led to the spread of infectious diseases. Her eyes widen at a strong reaction. As the others look on, Kane mentions something called slime treatment, a term that leaves Noelle completely baffled. She asks him to explain what it is. Realizing her confusion, Noelle quickly clarifies the concept. She explains that in larger towns, wastewater is drained into a reservoir outside the city walls. Slimes naturally gather there, attracted to the filth, and automatically process it. She adds that it's more accurate to say they absorb and dissolve anything that isn't water, rather than just cleaning dirt. Kane considers this, concluding that in a world without a sewer system, such a method might be the best option. He admits he'd never heard of it. Noelle smiles, remarking that such an idea is to be expected from someone so worldly. He eagerly expresses his wish to implement the system in their town, wondering if they could create an opening leading outside the city walls. Randolph steps in with a crucial point. They cannot let the slimes inside the city walls. The success of the project, he concludes, will depend entirely on how they execute it. He listens as Noelle addresses Randolph's concerns, assuring him that the slime reservoir will be fine even if it's not excessively far from the town. She explains that slimes are weak monsters, and should their numbers grow too large, lower-ranking adventurers can easily manage them. Randolph considers a distance of 1 kilometer to be safe, while Noelle concedes the plan is possible as long as it doesn't compromise the town's defenses, despite the lack of precedent. A determined smile spreads across his face as he realizes the potential. By combining the knowledge from his past life with the existing systems of this world, he could transform this into a truly great town. Noelle adds that while it feels somewhat pitiful to use and defeat the slimes so conveniently, it is a normal practice in this world, one that even comes with rewards. With this consensus, the group's morale soars. Gardy, the large coachman, enthusiastically rallies everyone, declaring they should move forward with the plan at full speed. The entire assembly, including Kane, his father, Noelle, and Randolph, shouts their agreement. And so, as a result of their spirited discussion, the new drainage method was officially decided upon. The project quickly expands. With his father, Luke, now also involved, Kane decides to pave the town streets with stone. He enlists his mother, Lydia, and sister, Alice, to create a design for the paving. Alice proudly presents her drawing, but Kane is baffled, asking if the creature depicted is a bird. An indignant Alice insists it's obviously a wolf and questions his eyesight. He clarifies his simple request to his mother and sister. He has asked them to design the stone paving, noting that basically anything is fine as long as the design doesn't have too much empty space. His mother, Lydia, embraces the creative challenge, asking for 2 or 3 days to think about it carefully. It was decided that adding a picture to the paving would make it more visually enjoyable. Kane smiles, confident that involving the two of them will ensure the project progresses smoothly. His father, Luke, overhears and remarks that if it's his wife and daughter creating the design, he's sure it will be gorgeous. He adds with a wry smile, however, that his daughter Alice's pictures can be a bit avant-garde. Sometime later, the project begins. On the main street, Gardy addresses the assembled villagers, explaining the plan to pave the road. He announces that this will require brief, 30-minute road closures at noon and in the evening, a measure taken to secure the villagers' understanding. As Gardy points him out, Kane watches the crowd, realizing they must complete the work quickly to avoid disrupting daily life. With the preparations complete, Gardy reports to Lord Kane that he has finished drawing the lines. Kane focuses a single thought in his mind as he prepares to act: recycling. He knelt on the dirt road, his small hands glowing with power. With a cry of stone, he began to manifest perfectly formed paving stones that spread out to form a new, clean path. The villagers watched in awe, with Gardy cheering him on enthusiastically. "Wow, amazing!" one exclaimed while another wondered aloud, "What is that?" In what felt like no time at all, the project was complete. Randolph, the butler, approached and noted that only 30 minutes had passed, much to Kane's surprise. The villagers were overjoyed with the result, remarking on how easy the new stone path was to walk on and how it would keep them clean even in the rain. Randolph offered Cain a quiet word of praise for a job well done. As the villagers departed down the newly paved street, some still glanced back, their expressions a mixture of gratitude and utter bewilderment at the impossible feat they had just witnessed. As the day's work on the new road winds down, Gardy rallies the men to keep their spirits high for the evening shift. Nearby, Cain watches with a satisfied smile, thinking that the people of the town will surely appreciate the final result. The construction of the stone pavement and an accompanying drainage system progress steadily. During a planning session, Noel informs Cain and his sister Alice that the design has finally been decided upon. She elaborates on the plan. The stone pavement will be arranged with decorative grass and flower designs across its full width at 100-meter intervals. Cain enthusiastically suggests using patterns of lilies, sunflowers, ginkgo leaves, and maple leaves, believing it will make the road look truly vibrant. As the project continues, Cain's direct involvement earns him the admiration of the townspeople. A group approaches him, with one man warmly thanking the young lord for his hard work. This gratitude echoes throughout the community. The citizens remark how much of a help the new stone-paved road is, and seeing their young lord work so hard with his magic inspires them to contribute with equal effort. Indeed, Cain is at the heart of the supply chain, using his earth magic to conjure finished stone blocks. His actions inspire the local children, who gather to watch and playfully mimic him, chanting stone in an attempt to use magic themselves. His constant presence among the workers fosters a sense of camaraderie. A grateful townswoman approaches Cain and offers him some freshly made skewers as a thank you. A month and a half later, the fruits of this collaboration are clear. As Cain accepts another treat from a local, the head butler Randolph observes from a distance. He notes with satisfaction how wonderful it is that the construction project is deepening the young master's relationship with the people of his territory. The moment of triumph arrives. Standing before the pristine, newly paved town square alongside Guardian Noel, Cain throws his fists up in celebration, his voice ringing with excitement as he declares, "It's complete." The finished road, embedded with glowing magical patterns, is a testament to their collective effort. The people of the territory now walk upon it, their daily lives improved by the vision and dedication of their young lord. He stood amidst the crowd, their reactions washing over him. The townspeople were amazed, calling the new road surprising and wonderful. One merchant expressed his gratitude, explaining how much easier it would now be to peddle his goods. Beside Cain, his sister Alice's eyes sparkled with excitement. The joyful atmosphere intensified as the people celebrated, showering the street with flower petals. Cries of thanks, Lord Cain, echoed through the air, a testament to their collective gratitude. A pure, unadulterated joy filled him. He realized that everyone was happy because of his magic, and a sense of profound satisfaction washed over him as he pictured himself leading the cheerful procession. The scene solidified into a portrait of communal triumph. The road was finally complete. Standing with his family and staff, Cain beamed. His father, Luke, remarked that it was a wonderful sight, noting he'd never seen such fine cobblestone roads, not even in the royal capital. Noel, the maintenance chief, observed that this achievement would surely draw visitors from outside their territory. But for Cain, the thought was simpler. He was just glad he'd been blessed with earth magic. The narrative shifts back in time, to a period when Cain was engrossed in creating abacuses, recognizing that the project would require significant trial and error. In the present, his sister Alice struggles with her own studies, her tutor pointing out yet another mistake in her work. Her tutor discusses the matter with Lydia, noting that since Alice seems to struggle with arithmetic, their next lesson will focus on that. They also share a moment of concern, remarking that Cain hasn't been very energetic lately and wondering if he's all right. This concern for her brother sends Alice's mind drifting to a painful memory. She recalls her mother, Lydia, whom she called Lionel, lying weakly in bed. In the memory, her mother looks up at her and softly calls her name, "My precious, dear Alice." As her mother's hand caresses her cheek, Lydia thanks her for being born as her daughter and promises that she will be happy. Overcome with grief, a young Alice cries out, pleading that she doesn't want her mother to die. With her final words, Lydia imparted a solemn duty to her daughter. "Please," she whispered, "protect Cain." Ever since that day, Alice has dedicated herself to protecting her brother. The memory sharpens, focusing on a day when Cain was 5. While playing on the stairs, he lost his footing and fell. As Alice lunged for him in terror, she felt a surge of power. The moment she received the physical enhancement skill from her departed mother, the fall left Cain unconscious. A doctor was summoned and administered various treatments, but the boy would not wake up. In a panic, Alice hurried to call for her mother, Lydia. She was crushed by guilt, believing the accident was her fault and that she had failed the promise made to her mother. Clasping her hands together, she prayed with all her might, even offering to give up sweets if God would only save Cain. Miraculously, Cain awoke. He sat up in bed, a bright smile on his face as he reached for his sister, bringing immense relief to Alice and their parents watching over him. Alice reflects that after he recovered, Cain changed. He no longer followed her around as he once did. Instead, he began practicing magic on his own, quickly and astonishingly mastering the art of magic manipulation. While her family worried about Kane, Alice was lost in her own feelings of inadequacy. Tears welled in her eyes as she lamented her shortcomings. She could barely maintain basic magic manipulation and still struggled with arithmetic. She felt she was an unworthy older sister. Unbeknownst to her, a soft knock sounded at her door. A maid, seeing young Kane standing there, asked him what was wrong. He explained that he had something to give to Alice, then peeked into the room, calling out to see if she was there. He stepped into the room and presented a long, wooden object. "Here, take this," he urged. Alice, taken aback, first asked what it was, but then her attention shifted, noticing his eyes were a little red. He simply replied that he had been sleeping a little while ago. He smiled brightly, explaining that it was a tool to make solving arithmetic problems easier. He proudly declared that he had made it specifically for her, even showing her a small drawing of her face and name he had inscribed on the bottom. Her expression shifted from curiosity to profound emotion. Staring at the abacus, a gift born of such thoughtfulness, her eyes widened and filled with tears as the weight of his kindness settled upon her. Overwhelmed, she threw her arms around her little brother in a tight embrace. She cried out that his kindness was almost painful, but promised that she would keep working hard. With tears of joy, she declared her love for Kane, who could only let out a surprised yelp. Luke Sanrose bursts into the room, his face a mask of panic. He throws his hands up in despair, shouting that it's a terrible situation. His father-in-law is coming for an inspection. The sudden, frantic announcement hangs in the air, met only by a moment of stunned silence. This impending visitor is a man of significant stature, the Earl of Shield from the neighboring territory, who is not only Lydia's father, but also Luke's own foster parent. Kane processes this new information. He realizes he must have met the Earl when he was only 2 or 3, but he has no memory of the man. He also intuits a strained relationship between his father and the Earl. His mother, Lydia, remarks on how sudden the inspection is. Luke, clutching his head in agony, confirms her fears, explaining that his father-in-law is an incredibly strict person and that even the slightest discourtesy would be a grave offense. Kane steps forward, asking his father how they plan to entertain him. Luke admits that while he appreciates the visit, it's complicated. Apparently, the Earl heard rumors about the new cobblestone roads and is coming to see them for himself. He continues, lamenting to Kane that the Samrose family has no specialty products to offer. The best they can do, he explains with a sigh, is have the knights hunt some monsters for their meat. As his father despairs, Kane touches his forehead in a confident gesture, a knowing smile on his face. While he mulled over his secret plan, his family's conversation continued in a worried tone. Alice lamented that if only they had some delicious food, they could properly entertain their grandfather. Her father, Luke, looked on in despair, muttering his wife's name. Lydia, however, tried to reassure him, insisting he shouldn't be so modest and that the new cobblestone road was a sufficient offering. Hearing their exchange, Kane considered the matter. He acknowledged that the food in the Samrose territory was indeed quite simple. However, having subsisted on convenience store meals in his previous life, he found any home-cooked meal to be a treat. As his family continued to discuss the need for special cuisine in the background, a sudden idea struck him. A vision of his item box flashed in his mind, presenting a clear solution. Addressing his parents, Kane has a sudden realization. He points toward a book, declaring it to be the hero's cookbook and expressing certainty that it must contain information about seasonings. With a determined glint in his eye, he proposes a bold idea to prepare delicious dishes from the cookbook that the visiting Margrave of Seals might not know, hoping to impress him. His suggestion, however, is met with a moment of shared confusion from his parents, Luke and Lydia, who exchange a puzzled glance. Lydia quietly wonders if something is amiss. Their confusion quickly melts into approval. Luke enthusiastically praises it as a wonderful idea, but Lydia's expression shifts to one of dawning realization. She asks Kane directly if he is actually able to read the book. Her question sends a jolt of panic through Kane. He clutches his head, realizing he's been caught in his pretense of being able to read the hero's cookbook. Though he is relieved they liked his suggestion. His father, however, seems to misinterpret his distress. Luke decides there is no time to address the matter now, and they will deal with it later. Internally, Kane confirms that his knowledge is from his past life, a fact he knows he cannot reveal. He muses that it makes sense for Kane to know about the abacus and stone pavement if he can indeed read the hero's cookbook. Putting the thought aside, Luke orders his butler, Randolph, to summon the head chef. Energized, Kane announces he will go get the book, telling his father to count on him. Shortly after, Kane stands before Lloyd, the head chef of the Samrose household. Lloyd correctly intuits Kane's intention, asking if the boy simply wants him to confirm which of the seasonings he lists are available. Kane agrees, stating he wants to check their inventory first. Taking the lead, Kane begins his inquiry. He is relieved to find they have mayonnaise and soy sauce, but confirms they do not possess ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, miso, or mirin. He continues the inventory, pleased to learn they have potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and garlic. Lloyd, the chef, clarifies that while they have butter, it is an unusable goat butter that is difficult to obtain, which also explains their lack of milk. Kane notes with satisfaction that the world has its own versions of beef, pork, and chicken. He had one more thing to ask before they finished their inventory. Tapping the list, Kane wondered aloud why some names like soy sauce or potato were so similar to words he knew, and asked if the chef had any other questions. He then presented a memo to head chef Lloyd, asking if he knew how to prepare any of the dishes written on it, specifically pointing out a potato, ham, and mayonnaise salad. The chef took the memo, perplexed. He confessed to Randolph that he had never heard of or eaten most of the items listed. The butler noted that one dish sounded similar to a meal made from grilled meat scraps, but was so unique that even the legendary hero had left a record of it. As Lloyd and Randolph conferred, Kane's father, Luke, interjected with a broad smile. He declared that they shouldn't pass judgment without tasting the food first and enthusiastically proposed they try to make everything on the list. His wife, Lydia, expressed concern over his reckless suggestion, but Kane spoke up in agreement with his father. The young boy asserted that one cannot truly know what a dish is like until it has been made and tried. With the family support secured, the pressure fell back on head chef Lloyd. He stared down at the extensive list of unknown recipes, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the request. Sensing the chef's hesitation, Kane looked at him with a pleading, straightforward gaze. He declared that Lloyd was their only hope, asking him to please take on the challenge. Moved by the boy's earnest plea, Lloyd's resolve hardened. He clapped his hands together and agreed to give it a try. Kane, now wearing his glasses, smiled, noting to himself that despite appearances, Lloyd had been a head chef for many years. With the decision made, the household staff began their work. Through a process of trial and error, head chef Lloyd managed to gather the necessary ingredients. As he cooked, Luke held a nervous Kane, jokingly telling him he was in danger. Several days later, the family gathered at the dining table. Head chef Lloyd stood before them, announcing that the dishes from the hero's home were finally complete. He thanked them for their patience and invited them to eat. On the dining table, 2 bowls of a creamy, chopped salad are presented with a flourish. They are part of a magnificent feast, a spread of dishes unlike any the family has seen before. Grilled meat patties, breaded cutlets, and other fried delicacies. The sight leaves the entire Sanrose family, Luke, Lydia, Alice, and Kane, utterly speechless, their eyes wide with astonishment. Luke is the first to speak, remarking that he has never seen dishes like these before. He notes the incredibly delicious aroma and declares that they should begin eating. Eagerly, Alice announces she's digging in, her fork poised over what she calls her favorite meat. She takes a bite, her eyes welling up with tears of joy. She exclaims that it's incredibly good and that this is the first time she has ever had meat cooked in such a way. Her mother, Lydia, tries a different dish, noting its rather unusual shape as she takes a delicate bite. Luke, too, is astonished, already on his second piece. He marvels at the crunchy texture and the rich flavor of the meat, then picks up a fluffy, block-shaped item, questioning if it could possibly be an egg and declaring it delicious. Watching his family's reactions, Kane smiles with satisfaction. He thinks to himself that, just as he suspected, the simple home cooking from his past life is considered a grand feast in this world. He and Alice then turn to the head chef, Lloyd, thanking him. Lloyd, beaming with pride, replies that it is his honor and that with these recipes, they can properly entertain the Earl. A list details the dishes served: potato salad, macaroni salad, hamburger, tonkatsu, fried chicken, and a sweet egg omelet known as tamagoyaki. He presents the meal to the visiting Earl of Shields, who joins the Sanrose family at the dining table. The Earl, along with Alice and the others, gasps in astonishment at the spread before them. The head chef, Lloyd, stands proudly behind Kane, who holds up the list of dishes, which has been dubbed the hero's recipe. The young boy beams with pride, holding the revolutionary menu he created. The scene flashes back to the Earl's journey. As his carriage approached the Sanrose estate, he had looked out at the impressive manor, chuckling to himself. He mused that it had been quite some time since he last visited his daughter, Lydia, and his son-in-law. Upon his arrival, he had remarked to Luke that the territory's new cobblestone roads were an impressive development, the kind of thing one typically only finds in the royal capital. This prompted Luke to pull his son into a private room. Closing the door behind them with a sharp click, he leaned in and asked Kane just how he had managed such a feat, demanding to know the secret behind the territory's sudden advancement. Back in the present, a wide, calculating grin spreads across the Earl's face. He, too, wants this secret for the development of his own territory. The Sanrose family, Luke, Lydia, Alice, and Kane, stand together, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and seriousness as they await an important arrival. While waiting, Kane internally laments the repetitive hospitality cuisine he has endured for the past month. His thoughts are interrupted when his father, Luke, announces that their guests have arrived. The day has finally come for the visit from Margrave Shields, and the family proceeds to the entrance to greet him. An imposing figure stands before them, an older man with a stern face, a full white beard and mustache, and sharp eyes behind a pair of glasses. This is the Margrave Shields. He greets Luke warmly, who in turn expresses his gratitude for the Margrave making the long journey. Beside their father, Kane and Alice watch the formal exchange between the two men. The Margrave's stern expression softens as he looks down at the children. He remarks on how much both of them have grown, specifically telling Kane that he has become a fine young man. In response, Alice steps forward with perfect poise. She greets him as grandfather, stating it has been a while and that she was looking forward to his visit, presenting herself as a proper lady. Her mother, Lydia, praises her for the excellent greeting. Kane, who is now 6 years old, watches his sister and resolves to do just as well. He formally addresses the man as Margrave Shields, stating it has been a while. The Margrave pauses, a flicker of surprise on his face. He looks down at Kane and asks why the boy doesn't call him grandfather the way Alice does. Kane freezes, panicking internally over whether he responded incorrectly. Flustered, he stammers that he is just feeling lonely. Seeing her son's distress, Lydia gently chides her father, telling him to stop joking around. The tension breaks as the Margrave erupts in hearty laughter, apologizing for the tease. He then turns his attention to Luke, observing that his son-in-law seems to have lost some weight, but Luke assures him his health is fine. He warmly welcomed the boy inside, to which Kane inwardly confessed his relief, having thought the Margrave would be a much scarier person. As they moved into a well-appointed room, the Margrave wondered aloud if his sudden visit had been a bother. Taking a seat, he explained that the merchants who travel through the region are always talking about the wonderful road the town has, and he wanted to see it with his own eyes at least once. At that moment, Lydia and Alice arrived. The Margrave greeted his daughter, noting it had been a while, and told Alice she was growing to look like her mother, inviting her to visit soon. Lydia replied that it was an honor, and Alice happily agreed. He then asked Lydia if her mother was doing all right, mentioning that they were originally supposed to come together. Lydia's expression shifted to one of surprise as the family asked what had happened. She quickly reassured them that it was nothing serious, but that her mother had hurt her foot a short while ago and sadly had to give up on the trip. She elaborated that her mother had simply fallen while tending to the garden at the mansion, and there was no need for worry. Understanding, the Margrave promised to visit her soon, a suggestion Alice eagerly supported. With the family matters settled, the Margrave's tone shifted. He took a sip from his teacup and announced it was time to discuss the main topic, causing Kane to swallow nervously. He began his assessment, stating that the road from the town to the mansion was quite something and that he was reminded of how different it is to see a thing for oneself rather than just hear about it. He continued his praise, noting that the streets were clean and the road surface was differentiated, making travel easy for carriages. He remarked that as soon as his carriage hit the cobblestones, the vibrations decreased and their speed picked up. He listened as Luke Sanrose elaborated on the road's benefits. Luke explained that after designating passage areas based on color differences, carriage-to-carriage accidents had significantly decreased. He proudly added that the cobblestone design itself was conceived by his daughter, Alice, and his wife, Lydia. The Margrave offered a simple acknowledgement. In response, he let out a sound of deep interest. Luke continued, explaining that since the roads were paved, the people of the territory had begun cleaning them voluntarily, leading to a much more sanitary environment. He theorized that this cobblestone effect encouraged more volunteers to clean around the main street shops daily. Listening to the exchange, King quietly took it all in, understanding the full scope of the project's success. The streets, once littered with trash and horse droppings even during the day, are now pristine. The unsightly mess has completely vanished. This transformation has not gone unnoticed by the townsfolk. A young woman with long, light hair wonders aloud why the cleaning started, and a young man explains the collective sentiment. They cannot allow the beautiful cobblestones, which Lord Kane worked so hard to create, to become sullied. The consensus is that the beauty of the new streets inspires everyone to maintain them. Meanwhile, Luke Sanrose reports this very effect to his father-in-law, the Margrave of Shields. As they sit for tea, the Margrave listens intently, murmuring his understanding and questioning if the cobblestones are truly that effective. His interest piqued. The Margrave strokes his chin and declares that he wants cobblestones for his own town as well. In the present, his arrival at the Sanrose estate causes a stir, as Kane, his sister Alice, and his father Luke look on in surprise while his presence is announced. He watches the two men, and a realization dawns on him. He had anticipated this. A simple request from an old man is one thing, but a conversation between two lords is an entirely different matter. He internally strategizes, knowing he must respond in a way that is not rude. The stakes are high. The other party is his own foster parent and father-in-law, the Margrave of Shields. A misstep in phrasing could obligate him to undertake the massive project for free. He quietly gets his father's attention. His father, Luke, understands the predicament immediately. Turning to the Margrave, he addresses the matter with formal courtesy, stating that if the Margrave is willing to make an official request, the Sanrose family will do their utmost to accommodate his needs. The Margrave's eyes narrow slightly behind his glasses, carefully considering the formal proposition. The entire Sanrose family, Luke, Lydia, Alice, and Kane, watches on, their attention fixed on the unfolding discussion. With a slight smile, the Margrave makes his intention clear, stating that if it is something on par with the cobblestone project, he would like to formally commission it. The Margrave, wasting no time, asked for the conditions and time frame of the project. His directness elicited a surprised "ha" from Luke Sanrose. The Margrave then ordered his attendant, Randolph, to bring forth the proposal, and the butler immediately complied. As the arrangements were being made, Kane felt a wave of relief. He thought to himself that it had gone well, and all the times his family had practiced for this moment had paid off. He recalled their playful arguments during these rehearsals, with his father jokingly refusing the terms. His attention was then captured by the intricate model of the town. The Margrave stared, utterly impressed by the craftsmanship, murmuring his astonishment. He then laid out the formal proposal on paper. The project would first involve creating a model, with a total duration of over 2 months and a budget of 500 gold coins. Kane's heart pounded in his chest as he processed the figure, an amount 25 times larger than his own project. He could only wonder how it would all turn out before the boy could dwell on the staggering sum. The Margrave declared his intent to commission the work immediately. The suddenness of the decision sent a ripple of shock through the entire Sanrose family, who all stared in stunned silence. Luke was the first to recover, assuring the Margrave that they would handle it. The Margrave, however, seemed perplexed by the lack of negotiation, asking if something was wrong. Luke emphatically shouted that there was no problem at all. Kane watched the exchange, realizing he hadn't expected the request to be accepted without any haggling. He understood that while such negotiations were normal, the Margrave of Shields was demonstrating his immense power and wealth by foregoing them. Meanwhile, the Margrave's gaze returned to the model, his admiration growing. He remarked on its magnificence before turning with a sharp, inquisitive look, demanding to know who, precisely, had made it. Luke proudly gestured toward his son. He confirmed that it was Kane who had performed the construction, using his earth magic. Kane simply offered a small, pleasant smile as his father revealed his central role. The revelation struck the Margrave with the force of a physical blow. "What?" he shouted, his voice echoing with disbelief. Kane did it. He could only stare, repeating that it was simply amazing. He listens as his father, Luke, suggests they postpone the detailed discussion until after dinner, noting that haste makes waste. Luke then informs Kane that a room has been prepared for him to rest. The family's butler offers to show him the way, and Kane calmly accepts. Elsewhere in the residence, Lydia watches with a worried expression. She silently pleads with her father, the Margrave, not to be too hard on her husband, Luke. Her concern, however, seems unfounded. Margrave Shields bursts into hearty laughter, explaining that he simply wanted to tease his son-in-law after so much time had passed. With a grin, he pats Luke's shoulder and comments that it seems he's been practicing. The teasing leaves Luke completely flustered as his family looks on. Watching the scene, Lydia smiles warmly. She reflects that her father always sees right through things, and acknowledges to herself that the whole family had indeed worked hard for this. Inside the Sanrose estate, Margrave Shields expresses his grave concerns to his daughter, Lydia. He states that the town model is dangerous and asks if anyone else knows the details. He adds, however, that it is a relief to see that his son-in-law, Luke, has matured and that the family seems to get along so well. Lydia looks at her father with a serious expression, assuring him that, as far as she knows, only he is aware. She also informs him that she has already put a gag order on the rest of the family regarding the matter. His eyes narrow as he delivers a stark warning to her. He stresses that she must be extremely careful, as this situation could be considered treason if handled poorly. She bows her head slightly in acknowledgement. Lydia thanks her father for his concern and confirms that she understands the gravity of the situation. The tense atmosphere breaks as he asks if she's all right for the evening's dinner party. Lydia smiles, reassuring him that she is fine and explaining that while the last gathering was simple, tonight's dinner will be special. Unseen by them, Kane and Alice peek from a nearby doorway. Her father asks what she means, and Lydia explains with a cheerful expression that tonight's menu features dishes based on the recipes of the hero. She promises to tell him more after they eat. Later, at the dinner table, a magnificent spread is laid out. The Margrave looks down his plate, a bead of sweat on his temple as he realizes he is looking at dishes made from the hero's fabled cookbook. He steels himself and decides to begin. With a soft clink, he pierces a piece of the food with his fork. The entire family, Luke, Lydia, Alice, and Kane, watches in silent anticipation as the Margrave prepares to take his first bite. He puts the food in his mouth, and his eyes fly open in utter disbelief. What in the world is this, he thinks, exclaiming internally that it is unbelievably delicious. From his seat, Kane watches his grandfather's reaction with keen interest. Still reeling from the taste, he expressed his amazement to the head chef, Lloyd, remarking that his daughter Aisha would surely be delighted. When Lloyd kindly offered to share the recipe, the Margrave accepted. Beside them, Kane beamed, declaring the egg dish to be the absolute best. Both the chef and the young boy celebrated their shared victory. The hero's recipe was a huge success. The following day, the positive atmosphere from the meal carried over. Margrave Shields ended up eating 3 additional servings of the egg dish, and as a result, the discussion about the cobblestone project also made rapid progress. An agreement was reached. In order to pave the Margrave's territory with stone, Kane and the others would need to stay for several months to oversee the work. Later, Margrave Shields spoke privately with his daughter, Lydia. He seemed reassured as she confirmed she was fine, having told Kane the same. She then informed her father that since various adjustments would be needed, she planned to accompany him to his territory after the new year. Her father nodded, understanding. He explained that he would need to discuss the other conditions with his bureaucrats, and they would review the results together when she arrived in his territory. He then turned his intense focus to Kane. With a grin, the Margrave declared, "I'm counting on you, Kane," causing the boy to startle and stammer out a quick agreement. With the negotiation successfully concluded, the Sanrose family gathered to wave goodbye as the Margrave departed. Back inside, Lydia commented on Kane's exhaustion while Luke remarked on the Margrave's strong personality. The tension of the meeting suddenly vanished, and Kane felt an overwhelming sleepiness. He realized he had managed to get through it without any major errors and thought that he should practice his magic so the cobblestone plan could proceed smoothly. For now, however, he decided a break was needed. Concluding that napping was the best option, he collapsed onto his bed in exhaustion. Several days after Marquis Shield's departure, life in the Sanrose estate continues. Kane walks alongside his mother, Lydia, who turns to him with a suggestion. Today, they will visit the archives. He internally reflects that recent preparations for road maintenance and hospitality have kept him so busy that he hasn't had any time to read the hero's tome. Now that he has a moment, he resolves to continue his studies of this world and its magic. Just then, his attention is caught by his mother in another room. He, along with his sister Alice and another young girl, peek around the doorframe to see Lydia looking at a letter with a surprised expression. A maid stands by, equally intrigued. Lydia notices her son, gently reminding him that he should knock before entering a room. Her mild admonishment quickly melts into a warm smile. She tells Kane to simply be more careful next time, her gentle tone reassuring him. Kane looks up at her, momentarily speechless. Kane and Alice both notice their mother's unusually bright demeanor. He asks if something good has happened. Lydia's face lights up as she confirms it, holding up the letter. She announces that she's received word that everyone is coming home for the new year. She elaborates that the letter is from their eldest son, Arthur. The message conveys that all three of Kane's older brothers, Arthur, Benjamin, and Chris, will be spending the new year together at the Sanrose household. Kane processes the news with a smile. He realizes that his elder brothers, Arthur and Chris, are coming back, though he internally admits he doesn't remember them well from when he was younger. The four Sanrose brothers are finally going to be all together. Lydia adds another detail from the letter. Even in the royal capital, people are talking about the new cobblestone roads in the Sanrose territory. Hearing this, Kane beams with pride and exclaims that it's amazing. Alice wonders aloud how many years it has been since all the brothers were together. Lydia thinks for a moment, recalling that Chris hasn't returned even once since entering the academy. She concludes it must have been about 3 years. Seeing his mother so radiant, Kane thinks to himself how cute she looks. Alice playfully wonders if their father has fallen for her all over again. Lydia, lost in happy anticipation, declares they must have head chef Lloyd make a delicious feast. Kane smiles, genuinely happy for his mother. He decided to pass the time until his brothers returned by visiting the vast, book-lined family library. He settled in at a desk with a lantern's warm glow, taking up the book of the hero once more. He thought to himself how much he was looking forward to his older brothers coming back, but decided to continue reading until then. As he tried to find his place, he wondered where he had left off. He then noticed something odd. The last few pages of the book were stuck firmly together. Prying them apart, he discovered a hidden compartment carved into the final pages. Within it lay a pair of simple, round-rimmed glasses. He picked them up puzzled. He wondered what these small glasses were for, surprised he hadn't noticed them at all before and pondering how they might be used. Curiosity getting the better of him, he tried them on. To his astonishment, they fit perfectly. He marveled at the fit, speculating that they must be enchanted with size adjustment magic. With the glasses now sitting comfortably on his nose, he decided to test them, looking through the lenses to see what they might reveal. Instantly, a translucent screen filled with glowing text and symbols materialized in the air before him. He gasped in utter amazement, staring at the floating display. Kane examines a new pair of glasses, a gift he has just accepted. He learns they are enchanted with magnification and reduction magic, allowing them to resize for convenience. More importantly, they grant the analysis skill. To use it, he must simply look at a target and say the word analyze, which will cause a window to appear with the results. A note accompanying the gift expresses a simple, kind sentiment from its giver. I hope it'll be of use to you. Hero, putting on the glasses, Kane's face lights up with pure joy. He exclaims that he's done it, that he can now use the analysis skill, and offers a heartfelt thank you to the mysterious hero Sama. His mind racing with possibilities, he immediately decides to check his status. He recalls having a magic skill that required analysis as a prerequisite. Puzzled, he wonders where one would even acquire such a skill, noting that at level 1, it seemed impossible. He calls forth his character information to investigate. The information for Magic Circle Magic appears. It is the ability to analyze magic of skill level -1 and transcribe it into a magic circle on scrolls or magic stones. The text confirms that the advanced skill analysis is necessary. It also specifies the high cost, 10 times the magic power to write the spell, and 3 times the power to use the written version. A wave of realization washes over Kane. He beams, understanding that with the analysis skill from the glasses, he can finally use the magic circle magic he had long since given up on. He quickly formulates a plan, outlining the necessary steps. First, he must create magical ink. Then, he will analyze a magic spell, transcribe it into a magical circle, and finally, transfer that circle onto an object. He confirms to himself that this is the correct procedure. Without hesitation, he begins. Cupping his hands, he visualizes an ink bottle forming in his palms and channels his magical energy into the space between them. A bright, swirling light manifests from his efforts. The light solidifies into a small, faceted bottle filled with a beautiful blue liquid. Kane gazes at his creation, feeling a surge of excitement. He notes that the next step is creating the magical circle, which first requires him to analyze the magic. As he holds the ink, his status updates, showing magical array/circle magic level 1. He is momentarily stunned. He was certain that a skill level of at least -1 was required to analyze magic, yet his is already at level 1. A look of pleasant confusion crosses his face. He lamented his situation, realizing that if his skill level were to drop to -1, it would become 0. Having never heard of a level 0 spell, he concluded that his magic circle magic was essentially useless. Sighing in resignation, he felt he had no choice but to wait for the skill level to increase on its own. He crawled across the floor, his gaze falling upon a small bottle of ink and a book on his desk. His eyes then shifted to a magical lamp nearby. A thought struck him. Perhaps, as a last resort, he could try to analyze the lamp. He focused his intent, activating the skill. He gasped in shock as a torrent of glowing symbols and complex diagrams suddenly filled his vision, emanating from the lamp. Surrounded by the unfamiliar symbols, he questioned if this was what an analysis of magic looked like. He then wondered if he was now supposed to use his create magical array skill on this raw data. Deciding to test his theory, he cast the spell. In response, the chaotic symbols coalesced, forming a single, intricate, and glowing magical array before him. The array resolved into a clear interface, identifying itself as the magical circle for light, a spell from the daily life magic category. He understood now. This was the magic circle of the lamp, revealed through his analysis skill. He decided his next step would be to copy the circle on a parchment. However, he was still puzzled. He didn't understand what daily life magic was, or why he was able to analyze the light spell. He began to wonder if light was a spell that didn't have a level at all. With his plan set, he sat at his desk, laying out a sheet of parchment. The magical ink he had created earlier was ready, placed beside the lamp that served as a subject. His eyes shone with determination. Steeling himself for the task, he thought, all right, I'm ready, hoping his first attempt at transcription would be a success. He begins the process of magical circle transcription. A glowing interface materializes before him, displaying the complete hexagram-based circle for the light spell. With focused intent, he utters the incantation, Sanrose, give me an illumination. At his desk, Kane carefully places his hands upon a scroll inscribed with a complex magical diagram, preparing to channel his energy into it. The scroll erupts in a brilliant flash. A small, radiant orb of light materializes above the paper, and tears of disbelief and joy well up in Kane's wide eyes. He beams with delight, exclaiming that it worked. He can finally use magical circle magic. This success was the result of his analysis skill. A system message had informed him that he could activate the spell by touching the light, magic circle and channeling his magic into it. At the time, he had wondered exactly how he was supposed to do that. Realizing how convenient his analysis ability is, he makes a mental note to thank the hero and resolves to try it out immediately. He decides to touch the magic circle and channel his magic as instructed. He leans forward, placing his hands over the intricate design on the paper. As he concentrates, a small orb of light begins to coalesce between his palms. The orb grows, casting a warm glow across the room. Kane looks up at his creation, a triumphant smile spreading across his face as he declares that he was able to use light magic. His moment of victory is interrupted, however, when a strange new interface materializes before him. It is filled with lines of incomprehensible text, and he can only stare at the screen in confusion. Another system message appears, offering an explanation. He has gained Magic Circle Magic, an ability to analyze level -1 magic and inscribe it on his scrolls or magic stones. The message confirms that this requires the advanced skill analysis. Following this explanation, a new menu becomes visible, displaying the light magic circle he had just used. He wonders if this option was there before, as a cursor-like icon appears, suggesting he can now interact with this new system. He stared in amazement at the light magic circle he had just created. The implications raced through his mind. Could he stock these circles? Could he transfer them to an item? The thought of collecting various magic circles filled him with a sudden, intense desire. His imagination took flight. If he could do this, did it mean he could essentially use all kinds of magic? He envisioned a powerful staff surrounded by shards of ice. The vision shifted to a sword wreathed in flames. A staff of ice, a sword of fire. He realized with a jolt that this power was the path to becoming the strongest. He clenched his fist, beaming with excitement. The possibilities were endless, and the sheer amount of things to discover and create was exhilarating. His reverie was broken as he was startled by his sisters. Alice found him looking completely dazed. "Ah, there you are," she exclaimed with a smile, while their younger sister stood by the door. asking where he had gone and reminding him that it was almost time for dinner. In the estate's courtyard, Cain excitedly commands the earth, shouting for a stone to go down, much to the flustered surprise of Gardy and a household maid. At his command, 3 glowing orbs of light materialize from the ground before him, shimmering with magical energy. The display leaves the household staff in awe. They gather around Cain, exclaiming that it's amazing no matter how many times they see it and eagerly asking him to do it again. As they shower him with praise, 2 young men observe from short distance. The taller one, Arthur Sanrose, the family's eldest son, calls out to Cain. Beside him stands Chris Sanrose, the 3rd son. Chris muses about how many years it's been since he last saw Cain, while Arthur remarks on how much the little boy has grown. Hearing their voices, Cain looks up with a confused expression. Chris, noticing the lack of recognition, asks with a smile if Cain still doesn't remember him, causing the boy to recall his mother's warning not to play much. He suddenly understands that this must be why. Before he can process the thought, Chris lunges forward and sweeps him into a tight, energetic hug, declaring that they'll get along from now on. A startled Alice, standing nearby, exclaims at how close her brother is getting. The boisterous reunion is gently interrupted by Lydia, who arrives with Arthur. She notes that both Chris and Alice are getting too close and flustering Cain, before asking her youngest son how he plans on returning to the mansion. As his mother gently pats his head, Cain explains that he was just making cobblestones with Gardy and the others, and that Randolph will be arriving soon to pick him up. His brother Chris stares, his mouth agape in pure astonishment. That's amazing, he breathes. The entire group is taken aback. Arthur, Cain's muscular older brother, questions if Cain truly created all the cobblestones himself. Gardy, the one-armed coachman, simply expresses his awe. Chris reflects on his own childhood, remarking that at Cain's age, he was only practicing his swordsmanship. Watching from the side is the second brother, Benjamin. He notes that while he knew of Cain's potential from their mother's letters, seeing it firsthand is still shocking. He recalls that he himself only learned to use magic the previous year, making Cain's current level of skill truly remarkable. He watches Cain with a keen, analytical gaze, a slight smile playing on his lips. As I thought, he murmurs, Cain is interesting. The young boy looks up, feeling the weight of his brother's intense scrutiny. Cain begins to sweat, flustered by the sudden, overwhelming presence of his brothers after so long. Arthur's attention, however, shifts to the town beyond. He notes that more important than the cobblestones themselves is the fact that the people of the domain are happy and the town is so lively. The 2 brothers flank Cain, beaming with pride. Arthur joyfully exclaims that their little brother is a genius, while Chris enthusiastically agrees that Cain is amazing. Caught between them, Cain looks utterly overwhelmed. As the praise continues, Cain grows more and more embarrassed, covering his head with his hands. Randolph, the butler, steps in with a gentle smile, advising the young masters to stop before their brother passes out from all the attention. Benjamin then calmly interjects, addressing his eldest brother. Stop calling him young master already, he says, referring to Arthur's formal address towards Chris. Cain stands between them, watching the exchange. A crowd of townspeople gathers, and a jovial, heavy-set man laughs boisterously. He spots 2 young men, noting their familiar closeness and correctly guessing they must be Cain's siblings, who have returned. One of the young men, a well-built individual with short, light-colored hair, waves warmly to the crowd. He smiles, expressing his gladness to be back as the townspeople welcome him home. Amidst the welcoming commotion, the family's butler, Randolph, steps forward to address the group. He announces that it is time to return to the mansion and directs them toward a carriage. Beside him, young Cain observes the scene, thinking to himself how popular his siblings are. Their mother, Lydia, beams with pure joy, her voice bright as she welcomes everyone back. Randolph then leans in, informing her that the master of the house is waiting for them in the reception room. Inside the mansion, Alice's face lights up as she greets one of her older brothers, calling out a warm welcome to big brother Benjamin. Her other brother, Arthur, exclaims that it's been a long time and compliments her on how beautiful she has become. Benjamin agrees, adding that she looks a bit taller than last year. A flattered Alice asks if they really think so. She presses her hands to her cheeks, unable to contain a happy giggle. Watching the interaction, Cain notes how happy both his mother and Alice look. He thinks to himself that it's wonderful his brothers are back and that Alice is being particularly sweet to them. Their father, Luke Sanrose, smiles warmly at his sons. He tells them they must be tired from their long journey and should rest well for the day. He continues to smile as the entire family, Luke, Lydia, Arthur, Benjamin, Alice, and Cain, gathers around a table, enjoying a peaceful moment together after the long-awaited reunion. Watching his father's overt happiness, Cain felt a wave of affection wash over him. He truly loved this family and the warmth of their bond. Later, after dinner, Cain found himself with some free time and decided to read The Book of the Hero in the library. It seemed his father had called his 3 older brothers into the study to discuss something important. He wondered idly if they would all take baths afterward. As he read, his modern sensibilities took over, and he began to think about the future. He considered the necessity of expanding the castle walls, but his most fervent desire was to introduce a proper sewer system with flushable toilets. His planning was cut short by a voice calling from outside his room, asking if he was there. The door opened, revealing his brother Chris. Surprised, Kane asked what he needed. Chris explained that the other brothers were calling for him and asked Kane to accompany him to his room. He then noticed the book Kane was holding, expressing amazement that his youngest brother was already reading. Chris admitted he was never good with books and rarely even went to the library. Flustered by the sudden attention, Kane could only stammer in agreement. He quickly offered to clean up his things, a nervous thought crossing his mind that he hoped this wasn't about something scary. Chris simply told him it was okay and to come along. He gently reminded Kane that even siblings shouldn't enter each other's rooms without permission, then added that it was their eldest brother, Arthur, who had sent for him. Following his brother, they arrived at a closed door. Chris announced their presence, and Kane timidly did the same. The door opened into a room where two young men waited. Seated with a calm and powerful presence was Arthur. Standing beside him, looking thoughtful in his academy uniform, was Benjamin. He greets Kane, explaining that he called for a private talk between the men of the family. Arthur admits he thought it was a bit early, but his brother Benjamin, standing beside him with a knowing look, had insisted it was fine. The young boy looks up at his two imposing older brothers, his expression filled with confusion. He wonders aloud what is happening. In response, Arthur begins the interrogation. He first confirms that Kane is aware of their family's status as viscounts, to which Kane meekly agrees. Arthur then states that there are 4 sons in the family and that he intends to be frank. His expression turning serious, he looks down at his youngest brother and asks him directly, "Kane, do you want to be the legitimate heir?" The question hits Kane like a physical blow, his mind reeling. He is utterly stunned that they would ask something so outrageous out of the blue. Even Benjamin seems surprised by the bluntness of the question, though he internally notes that the answer should already be obvious. His 2 older brothers are asking him, the 4th son, if he desires to usurp the line of succession and become the next lord. Without a moment's hesitation, Kane gives his firm answer. He declares that he does not want to, a response that seems to catch Arthur off guard. He looks up at them earnestly and clarifies his position. He has no desire for more power or status. His only wish is to be able to help his eldest brother, Arthur, with the development of their family's territory. Hearing this selfless declaration, both Arthur and Benjamin exchange a look of stunned silence, their serious expressions softening with surprise. Luke Sanrose pinches the bridge of his nose in exasperation, asking why they all give him the same answer. Beside him, his wife Lydia smiles knowingly, remarking that it is just as she predicted. She gestures towards their sons, Arthur and Chris, confirming their unanimous response. Arthur then explains his reasoning, stating that he sees their father constantly surrounded by documents, which seems like a tough and boring existence he wishes to avoid. He declares his ambition to make the Sanrose family prosperous enough to support all his siblings. Luke listens intently to his eldest son's heartfelt declaration, though he seems to dismiss the idea, deciding to ask Kane next. As he begins to turn, Luke abruptly rises from his seat with a sharp movement. Before he can pose the question, however, young Kane looks up with wide, determined eyes and makes a request of his own. "Lend me your strength." Hearing this unexpected plea, both Arthur and Chris are visibly moved, placing their hands over their hearts in a gesture of sincere acceptance as Luke turns his full attention to his youngest son. The 2 older brothers bow their heads slightly in a formal display of unity, declaring in unison, "As you wish." Kane is completely taken aback by their grand, formal response, stammering in surprise as he processes their immediate acceptance. Seeing the bond forming between his sons, Luke places a firm hand on each of his older son's shoulders. He declares an end to the formalities, proposing that they celebrate the development of their territory as brothers and discuss their recent situations. He leans in with a sly grin, adding that they should especially discuss her and other such matters, a teasing glint in his eyes. During a lively family meal, Kane reacts with flustered surprise, questioning if he is meant to go first in their discussion. His exclamation is punctuated by the arrival of a massive platter of food, including a large wheel of cheese and bread. The scene shifts to a private meeting held after dinner, while Kane was occupied in the library. Luke Sanrose gathers his other children, Arthur, Chris, and Alice, and after thanking them for their reports, announces that he has one more favor to ask. He explains to his wife Lydia and the others that he has noticed a change in Kane since the baptism ceremony. The boy seems far more mature, and Luke speculates that it might be the result of a new skill he acquired or a sudden increase in his knowledge. Arthur, his expression serious, immediately agrees with his father's assessment. He confirms that he definitely felt Kane's unusual maturity during their intensive training sessions. Hearing this confirmation, Luke makes his formal request. He asks that during their stay, they all keep a close eye on Kane. He specifically tasks Arthur with teaching the often reckless boy how to properly protect himself. Arthur smiles and readily accepts the responsibility, affirming that Kane is, after all, their precious little brother. Alice and Chris look on, also in agreement. Chris then adds his own thoughts with a thoughtful smile. He agrees, admitting he finds Kane very intriguing and wants to teach him all sorts of magic. However, he tempers this by acknowledging that they must be careful, as their brother is still only 6 years old. A young woman with long, light hair sits at a desk, diligently writing with a quill. She is dressed in a formal instructor's uniform, focused on her work within a well-appointed room. Her concentration is broken by a faint knocking sound at the door. The door creaks open, and young Kane peeks inside, looking nervous. He timidly addresses the woman as Big Brother Benjamin, asking if he can discuss something with her. She turns from her desk and calmly grants him permission to enter. Once inside, Kane, with earnest tears welling in his eyes, explains that he has many ideas to improve the quality of life in the territory and would like her advice. Standing before him, Benjamin asks what he wishes to discuss, and he affirms his request with a determined yes. A smile of amusement and curiosity spreads across Benjamin's face. She agrees, telling him to go ahead and share his ideas. Kane's nervousness vanishes, replaced by pure enthusiasm. Holding up 2 fingers, he declares that there are 2 things he wants to create. First, a bathhouse, and second, a sewer system. He elaborates on the bathhouse, explaining that it would be like a very large barrel filled with hot water, big enough for over a dozen people to bathe at once. He believes that making such facilities available will improve hygiene and reduce the spread of illness. Benjamin confirms her understanding of the concept. Kane then details his plan for the sewer system. He describes a network of underground pipes to collect rainwater and wastewater from toilets and kitchens throughout the town. This water would be treated outside the territory before being safely returned to the rivers, further improving sanitation and reducing disease. He concludes his presentation with a bright smile, confident that once these projects are completed, the people of the territory will be delighted. Benjamin listens intently, a hand on her chin, before letting out a thoughtful, amused laugh. Leaning forward, Benjamin's expression is one of pure admiration. She tells Kane his ideas are wonderful, admitting that it's hard to believe a 6-year-old could conceive of such a thing. Kane is left utterly speechless, his eyes wide with shock at her praise. He clarifies that the idea wasn't his own, but something he learned from pictures in the hero's tome. His tutor, Benjamin, listens with a thoughtful expression. She acknowledges his knowledge of the bathhouse and asks what he wants her to do with this information. Kane cheekily remarks that the hero's tome is also a useful excuse, prompting Benjamin to decide to let the matter rest. She then questions if simply showing her the plans is enough. Kane agrees, but immediately raises a new issue, the need for a large quantity of hot water. He explains that while no spell exists to create hot water directly, there is magic to alter an object's temperature. He suggests that since Benjamin has mastered fire magic, she should try it. He follows up by revealing his own plan, to use his magical circle magic to create a permanent magical tool specifically for heating the water. His proposal catches Benjamin completely off guard. She stares, momentarily speechless, questioning if he can truly accomplish such a feat with magical circle magic. The full weight of his suggestion settles on her. She finds the idea of creating a tool that anyone could use outrageous, especially since the general usefulness of magical circle magic is already known. She immediately asks if there are any restrictions, prompting Kane to inwardly praise her sharp intellect. In response, Kane explains the limitations. Activating a magical circle requires 10 times the original spell's energy, and one can only create a circle up to their own magic level. Realizing the high energy cost, Benjamin asks a crucial question. How much magical energy does Kane currently possess? He hesitates, fidgeting nervously. He decides that since he's speaking with Big Brother Ben, he will be completely honest, though his reluctance is clear. With a small, almost sheepish expression, he delivers the shocking truth. The amount of magical energy he possesses is infinite. The revelation leaves Benjamin utterly stunned. After a moment of stunned silence, she apologizes before breaking into unrestrained laughter. Wiping a tear from her eye, she declares that Kane truly is something else. He thanks Kane for confiding in him, but sternly reminds the boy that this must remain a secret from everyone else. With tears welling in his eyes, Kane clenches his fist and promises that he will, of course, keep it quiet. After the boy's promise, Benjamin steers the conversation back to their original topic. He asks Kane if he is all right with using level 2 temperature-changing magic for their project. Internally, Benjamin clenches his hands, realizing they must proceed with extreme caution. As he considers this, Benjamin reflects that Kane's growth is far faster than he had anticipated. He then asks how Kane confirmed the magical circle's activation, and if that means the magic is level 2. Kane looks downcast, explaining that unfortunately, the level was insufficient. The boy clarifies that it was a daily life magic spell that somehow transformed into a magical circle, but points out that there is no daily life magic that can alter temperature. The revelation stuns Benjamin, who touches his chin in disbelief, exclaiming his shock. Recovering, Benjamin suggests a course of action. Since anyone can learn daily life magic at the church, he advises Kane to consult his father and go learn it there. The scene shifts to Kane and his sister, Alice, standing before the town church, looking up at the grand structure, ready to follow that advice. After consulting with his father, Luke, about daily life magic, Kane finally understands. With his sister Alice by his side, he remarks that it has been a while since they last came to the church. The boy comes to a startling realization. He was the only one who didn't know. It sinks in that what he considered extraordinary is merely commonplace in this world. His thoughts are interrupted by Alice, who eagerly urges him to go inside. She explains that their father had instructed her to accompany him to finalize his travel preparations before they headed to the church. Their mother, Lydia then informs Kane that his new travel outfit is finished and ready for final adjustments. She reminds him that they had already taken his measurements for the clothes he will wear when they visit the frontier domain of Count Seals. The reason for the detour becomes clear as Kane stands looking exhausted at the tailor's shop. While Alice impatiently tells him to hurry, he internally laments the tedious process of repeatedly putting on and taking off the outfit for the fitting. Having completed their task, the siblings arrive at the grand entrance of the church. An elderly bishop, Sistina, greets them with a warm smile, welcoming Kane-sama and Alice-sama and thanking them for coming. Inside, Sistina leads them through the ornate hall. He mentions that he has heard their story and politely asks them to follow him, to which Kane responds with a formal greeting. The bishop gestures towards a magnificent stained glass window depicting the winged goddess Guardia, a central figure of their faith, before leading the children onward. He brings them to a large, circular stone tablet set into the floor, intricately carved with runes and featuring a prominent crystal at its center. With a gentle hand on Kane's back, Sistina explains the artifact's purpose. He tells the boy that by using this very stone tablet, he will learn daily life magic. He eagerly tells the bishop that he'd like to learn how to create hot water and any other useful spells if possible. The bishop, Sistina, considers the request and asks which specific daily life magic Kane would like to learn today. Before the bishop can elaborate, Kane adds another request, asking if he could also be told the history of daily life magic. Sistina closes his eyes and begins the tale. He explains that daily life magic was originally conceived and spread by a figure known as the hero, who created it to make life more convenient, even for those without magical skills. Beside them, Alice murmurs that she supposes she knows a little about it. The revelation that this magic was created by the legendary hero leaves Kane stunned. The bishop continues, explaining that at first, only the hero himself could grant these spells, and a famous anecdote tells of him temporarily fleeing from the overwhelming number of people who sought his aid daily. To solve this problem, the hero created the very stone tablet before them. This artifact made it possible for the church to grant daily life magic, which in turn became a source of income. Alice remarks that it's quite a lot to take in. Kane, however, feels a deep connection to the story. He smiles, realizing with amazement that magic created by a fellow reincarnated person from Japan is still helping people in this world. The thought is somehow heartwarming. The legacy left behind is significant. The total number of daily life magic spells originally created by the hero was 10. However, only 9 have been passed down to the present day. The bishop gestures to the tablet and lists some of the available spells: purification of food and drink, cooling liquids to -5 degrees Celsius, dispensing 500 cubic centimeters of boiling water, voice amplification, and creating a magnifying lens. Kane and Alice look on in awe. After listing the possibilities, Sistina explains that the number of spells one can memorize is determined by placing a hand on the tablet. He asks if Kane is ready to try it right away, and the boy responds with an enthusiastic yes. With the boy's eager consent, the bishop instructs him to place his hand on the artifact. Kane steps forward, his expression resolute, and presses his hands firmly onto the surface of the glowing stone tablet. He placed his hands upon the stone, and immediately, it erupted in a brilliant flash of light. The young boy stared, wide-eyed, as the magical energy pulsed, his sister Alice watching with equal astonishment. As the light subsided, the priest, Sistina, smiled warmly. He explained to the stunned boy that since the stone had flashed 4 times, it was a clear sign that Lord Kane possessed the aptitude to memorize up to 4 daily life magic spells. He then instructed Kane to keep his hand placed on the tablet to proceed. Kane, understanding, immediately declared his choices, deciding on hot water, loop, and light. He thoughtfully added that he would save the 4th slot to be memorized when he wished to learn another daily life magic spell in the future. With the choices made, Sistina closed his eyes and began the ritual. An ancient incantation flowed from his lips, the magical words themselves manifesting as glowing runes that drifted towards the young boy. He pressed his hands firmly onto the tablet once more. A soft glow emanated from the stone, and particles of light enveloped him as the knowledge of the spells flowed directly into his being. The process complete, he eagerly turned to the priest, asking to also memorize the daily life magic. His sister Alice beamed with excitement. Sistina chuckled, confirming that Kane had indeed successfully mastered the spells and that he should check his status board later to see the results. Lying in his bed with his hands behind his head, Kane stares at the ceiling, a new project solidifying in his mind. He has decided he's going to build a bathhouse. He closes his eyes, trying to recall the details of the bathhouses he frequented before his reincarnation. To build one from scratch, he first needs to figure out what components are essential. His thoughts drift to the process, taking off one's shoes before passing under the Norn curtain, undressing in a changing room, and then entering the bathing area. He visualizes the necessary items: showers for washing the body, along with wash tubs and stools. Sitting up with renewed determination, Kane realizes that soap is already produced within the territory, which is a relief. He concludes they will also need towels, but decides a sauna can be a project for another time. After explaining his ambitious plan, Kane successfully obtains his father's permission. They decide to build the bathhouse near the back entrance of the mansion. Since his father and older brother, Ben, are away hunting, the construction will be a two-person job. Kane approaches Gardy, the household's gardener, and asks for his input on how large the structure should be. Gardy thoughtfully considers the question. He reasons that if the bathhouse is too small, it won't be relaxing, but if it's too large, the task of filling it with hot water will become a significant burden. The gardener then asks a simple, yet profound question. What exactly is a bathhouse? The query strikes Kane with the force of a revelation. He suddenly understands that in this world, where everyone uses cleanup, magic, the very concept of bathing in water is unknown to many. He contemplates the social structure this implies. While the cleanup spell is convenient, it might not be accessible to everyone, such as those who can't afford church donations or those without magic. For those who already possess such magic, building a bathhouse might seem entirely unnecessary. Later that evening, as Kane stands beside his sister Alice, a maid uses the cleanup spell on him, the magic glowing briefly in her hand. She declares him clean and says it's Alice's turn next. Alice reminds them it's bedtime, suggesting they all get clean before sleeping. Kane looks on, surprised at the instantaneous nature of his bath. He explained with a blissful expression that the cleanup magic only cleans the surface of the body. It is nothing to remove the deep-seated fatigue from within. What he truly desired was to soak in a hot bath and slowly wash away the day's exhaustion. He turned to the still confused Gardy, declaring that this was precisely why he had to build a bathhouse, no matter what. The explanation finally clicked for Gardy. He mused that if the lady of the house were to use it, a maid would likely accompany her. He then suggested it should be large enough for about 3 adults to bathe together. His mind conjured an image of Lydia and Alice happily relaxing in the water with Kane, and he agreed with his own idea. Gardy, flustered by his own imagination, enthusiastically agreed to make the bath large enough for at least 3 adults. Kane then added another requirement, asking if it would be possible to have windows installed. The gardener admitted he wasn't sure about that and would ask Lord Randolph. As Kane gave his approval, his mind immediately shifted to the complexities of construction. He wondered about the roof and the walls, questioning if he should imagine hollow stone walls or build them solid and use his delete magic to carve out the interior. The order of operations was critical. He recalled a previous attempt where he failed to properly connect stone walls built atop a retaining wall. The memory solidified his resolve. He needed to think everything through carefully before beginning construction. As Kane pondered, Gardy returned, apologizing for the wait. He announced that he had brought Lord Randolph. Gardy also explained that since she happened to be at the mansion, he had also brought Noelle. Noelle greeted Kane, remarking that it had been a while. The young lord thanked her, feeling reassured. Noelle explained that she had heard about the situation from Gardy and came because she hoped she could be of some assistance to him. With the experts assembled, Randolph immediately inquired about the windows Kane had in mind. Kane specified that their main purpose was ventilation, so they didn't need to open wide. Most importantly, he wanted them designed so that no one could see in from the outside. Randolph confirmed that such a thing existed, though it might be a bit large. He described a type of window where one pushes the lower part outward from the inside to open it. He offered to have a few delivered to the mansion as early as the next day, an offer Kane eagerly accepted. He then turned his attention to Noelle, the maintenance division chief, requesting her advice on the bathhouse's construction. Kane specified that he wanted her to procure several options in different sizes and styles, to which she readily agreed. He elaborated on his vision, outlining a structure with a bathtub, a washing area, a changing room, and a separate space for hot water. As he spoke, however, a problem occurred to him. He admitted that while he could hollow out walls to create spaces, he wasn't sure how to make the inner walls and the bathtub itself stable with his magic alone. Hearing his dilemma, Noelle offered a simple, practical solution. She suggested that he should create what he could with his magic, and for the remaining parts, they could simply hire the stoneworkers or carpenters guild to handle the construction. The straightforwardness of her idea seemed to stun Kane, as well as Randolph and Gardy, who were listening nearby. The young lord could only let out a confused sound. A moment later, the simple logic of her proposal sank in, and his confusion turned to a sudden, wide-eyed realization. It was true. Energized by this breakthrough, he thanked Noelle profusely. He acknowledged that the project only seemed difficult because he was trying to accomplish every single part with magic. Now, he could simply create the main structure and have the rest built conventionally. Noelle humbly accepted his thanks, stating it was an honor to serve. With a clear plan now in mind, Kane announced to the group that they would proceed to build everything except for the roof. Turning to an empty plot of land, he raised his hand and called upon his creation magic, commanding a stone wall to rise from the ground. His magic responded instantly, erecting a large, solid stone wall before the astonished eyes of Noelle, Randolph, and Gardy. With the foundation in place, Kane announced his next step will be to create the openings for doors and windows. Before carving out the openings, however, he paused to concentrate. He knew he first needed to circulate his mana carefully, preparing to divide his power into several smaller, more precise magical applications. With his mana properly prepared, he targeted 2 sections of the newly formed wall. With a simple command to delete, the stone in those rectangular areas vanished completely, leaving behind perfectly formed apertures. He confidently announced his next step to the onlookers. He would create a low stone paving, tilting it slightly to allow water to drain properly. As Gardy voiced his curiosity about the floor, Noel and Randolph expressed their admiration, amazed that he had erected the walls in a single act. True to his word, a sloped, stone-paved floor materialized within the structure, shimmering with residual magic. He then immediately began to conjure the stone for the bathtub itself. Noel inspected his work closely. She noted that while it was shaped well enough, there were some rough parts and small gaps that could be tidied up. Gardy, however, was simply amazed, calling it wonderful. As Kane declared the bathtub was next, Noel reflected internally on what a driven person he was. He had already achieved a level of skill that could drastically reduce the time and effort of construction. Yet he still aimed for even greater heights. Taking her feedback to heart, Kane focused his magic, uttering the word delete to precisely remove the imperfections. With another surge of power, the bathtub structure was complete, its smooth, hollowed-out form gleaming. The onlookers could only gasp in astonishment. Beaming with pride, Kane leaned over the edge of his creation, glad that he had managed to pull it off with his earth magic. Gardy peered in alongside him, his excitement palpable as he asked if this was the very spot where they would be bathing. Noel confirmed his assumption with a smile, adding that all that remained was to fill it with hot water. Her simple statement struck Kane like a thunderbolt. His triumphant expression vanished, replaced by a look of pure, wide-eyed panic. He had been so focused on the structure that he hadn't thought at all about how to actually supply the water. With the new bathhouse built, Kane contemplates the next logistical hurdle, the water supply. He decides he will have to build something like a water pipe, a concept that leaves his companions, Noel and Gardy, completely bewildered. He explains his idea to them. To cut down on the effort of hauling water from the well every time they use the bathhouse, he wants to make a pipe that carries water directly there. As his companions listen, a new concern dawns on him. He realizes that if he makes the pipe from simple clay, dirt might eventually start mixing into the water after prolonged use. The realization gives him pause. Suddenly, a solution strikes him, the earth press spell. He reasons that by using this magic to compact and harden the soil, it will become like concrete. With renewed enthusiasm, he shows his plan to Noel and Gardy, asking for their help once more. Kane recalls the process. He had Randolph inform his father of the plan, and once he received permission, the work resumed. They encountered a few failures along the way, but pressed on. He notes that Noel, with her expertise from the Maintenance Bureau, successfully calculated the proper slope for the pipe. Kane is impressed, but another problem soon presented itself. Despite the difficulties, their hard work paid off. After a significant amount of time, the pipe was finally complete and properly shaped, connecting the well to the bathhouse. With the project finished, a dirt-covered but smiling Kane thanks everyone for their help. Gardy, wiping sweat from his brow, and Noel, beaming with pride, expressed their gladness at being able to assist him. The group laughs together, all of them completely covered in mud from their efforts. They discuss the next task, taking turns working the pump to fill the new bathtub halfway with water. Exhausted from their labor, they take a short break. Kane uses his magic to create simple chairs for them to rest on. As he sips a drink, he contemplates the future, realizing that pumping water manually every day will be arduous and that they need to devise a better system. He stands before the newly installed pipe, announcing his plan to use hot water magic, and then add boiling water to achieve the perfect temperature. With a confident smile, he declares that this should be sufficient. Telling the others to watch, he invokes his magic, shouting hot water. The tub begins to fill, reaching about halfway. A powerful stream of magically generated water gushes into the bath. Noel watches, utterly amazed, remarking that this is her first time seeing life magic used and how incredibly handy it is. As the water level rises, Kane carefully dips his hand in to test the temperature, humming thoughtfully. Satisfied with the result, he confirms that the preparations are complete. He turns to Gardy, Noel, and Randolph, asking for their assessment. Though feeling the strain of the magic, he explains his calculation that a ratio of 1 part hot to 2 parts cold water seems correct. The 3 staff members, Gardy, Randolph, and Noel, stare in stunned silence at the steaming bath before them. Seeing their confusion, Kane explains that this is what he calls a bath. Gardy and Noel, observing the steam, remark on how hot it looks, finally grasping the reality of what he has created. He then surprises them by suggesting they all enjoy it first. Gardy tests the water, noting that the temperature is perfect for a long soak, and Noel agrees it's just right, not too hot and not too cold. Following his invitation, Noel sits on the edge of the tub, dipping her feet into the water. A look of pure bliss crosses her face as she tells Kane how wonderful it feels. She marvels that her whole body feels warm and the fatigue is melting away, even though only her feet are submerged. Her smile, mirrored by Gardy's, reflects pure enjoyment. Watching them, Kane feels a swell of pride, thinking to himself that with a proper bath like this, everyone in the household should be quite happy. This satisfaction shatters in an instant. A horrifying realization crashes down on Kane as he clutches his head in panic. He hadn't thought at all about how to drain the water. His sudden change in demeanor immediately draws the attention of his staff. Randolph, Noel, and Gardy look over, their expressions filled with concern as Noel asks what's wrong. By the time their work is done, night has fallen. Kane explains that he apologized to everyone and then had them help him construct a drain pipe. Noel quickly tells him not to apologize, and Gardy cheerfully adds that it was just another opportunity for them all to work hard together. Their collective effort is a success. A newly fashioned drain is now installed in the floor of the bath, and a tiny, triumphant Kane declares the job done. The ordeal has left him completely drained. He reflects on how his previous world had everything so conveniently prepared. Having exhausted himself making the drain pipe, he only had enough energy to soak his feet to recover from the fatigue. His exhaustion, however, only strengthens his resolve. Clenching his fist with determination, Kane vows that no matter what, he will soak in a proper bath tomorrow. Later, cleaned up and being carried by Gardy, he flashes a bright smile at his loyal staff. He tells them all that he's counting on them again for the next day. As darkness settles over the manor, the staff gently inform Lord Kane that it is time for his dinner and that they should call it a day. He readily agrees. He takes his seat at the long dining table, joining his father Luke, his mother Lydia, his sister Alice, and other members of the Sanrose family for the evening meal. He sat at the dinner table, looking utterly exhausted. His father, Luke, shared a similarly weary expression. His sister, Alice, however, seemed perplexed by their state, wondering aloud how a lord's desk work could be so brutal as to leave her brothers in such a condition. His mother, Lydia, looked on with concern, pleading for her other sons, Arthur and Chris, to pull themselves together. The conversation continued as Alice cheerfully noted her own boundless energy, causing Kane to marvel at how his sister never seemed tired from her studies. Luke then informed Arthur that the day's workload had been on the lighter side, before turning to Chris and advising him that he'll need to take the lead once he gets a girlfriend, leaving Kane looking even more worn out. He finally understood. His brother Chris had been out visiting 10 shops in a single day without a break, making the rounds to greet people in the territory. The realization solidified his resolve. He had to hurry and finish the bath for them. The next morning, he put his plan into action. He was greeted warmly by Gardy and a group of other men. "Good morning, Lord Kane," Gardy said with a smile. He returned the greeting, stating that he would be counting on them. He identified the assembled group as craftsmen from the stoneworkers and carpenters guilds. Getting straight to business, he instructed them to put a roof, doors, and windows on the bathhouse structure, and to fix the bathtub in place inside. When Kane asked how long the work would take, Gardy responded with booming confidence. Giving a thumbs up, he declared that they could finish before sunset. Kane's face lit up with surprised delight. The craftsmen immediately set to work, splitting up to bring in lumber and plaster. Kane watched over the site, providing instructions whenever the workers called for him. He watched with excitement as the building rapidly took shape. By lunchtime, the framework for the roof was already finished. He listened as the head craftsman praised the foundation, noting that even veterans would struggle to build such a room. The man then voiced a concern. Without a heat source, the bathhouse might end up being too cold to use. The realization struck him. The craftsman was right. A separate building would be too cold for bathing. Kane quickly suggested installing a stove, particularly in the changing room, an idea that seemed to surprise the craftsman, who asked if such things even existed. The craftsman worried about the expense, but Kane assured him the provided budget was more than sufficient. He even offered to create the stove himself using magic if the craftsman could just show him the shape. Hearing this, the man readily agreed to prepare one right away. In return for providing the stove, the craftsman asked if Kane could build a stone barrier around where it would be placed. Kane agreed, and with a flash of power, instantly summoned a perfectly formed stone wall from the ground. After erecting the wall, he used his magic to instantly dry the plaster. He didn't stop there, also creating stools and wash tubs for the bathhouse. The craftsman watched in awe, remarking that while he had heard stories, Kane's ability to create things in an instant was truly incredible. Meanwhile, the other workers were equally impressed by their own leader's strength, amazed that the stoneworker could carry so many heavy planks at once. The man simply brushed off the compliment, focused on the task. Their work continued at a feverish pace after lunch. As the sun began to set, the team hoisted the final beams into place, completing the roof. With a traditional Norran curtain hung over the entrance, Kane stood before the new building, his fist raised in triumph as he declared the project complete. The craftsmen beamed with pride, admiring their handiwork. The once empty plot of land now hosted a beautifully constructed bathhouse, its interior fully furnished and ready for use. They gathered around the young lord, congratulating him and praising his amazing earth magic. Kane, however, humbly deflected the compliments, insisting that the success was all thanks to everyone's collective effort. He beamed, expressing his heartfelt gratitude to the workers. Thanks to their combined efforts, he declared, they now had the best bathhouse ever. Afterward, he began preparing for the grand opening that evening. The workers and Noel looked on with admiration, addressing him respectfully as Lord Kane. He used his life magic to create several light sources, then set out high-quality soap and towels, along with baskets for storing clothes. While he was explaining the baths used to the household maids, his mother, Lydia, approached him. She had heard about the new bathhouse from them and was clearly impressed. She relayed that even Randolph had praised Kane's leadership and magic, calling the project marvelous. Kane, however, humbly insisted it was a group effort. His sister, Alice, then eagerly declared her desire to use the bathhouse as well. Lydia, with a gentle smile, also asked if she might be permitted to use it. Kane happily agreed, telling his sister it was perfectly fine. She then made a suggestion that sounded lovely to her mother, that she, Kane, and Lydia should all go in together. The proposal left Kane utterly flabbergasted, his mind reeling from the unexpected suggestion of bathing with his mother and